Yo, how are you doing, folks? Welcome to episode 64 of the Simpa Life Podcast. It's been a very interesting past 7 days, past week. A lot of curious things have gone on in the realm of the world of UK cannabis. Quite a few that we are going to discuss today with today's guest. I got a few exciting announcements, but I'm actually just going to leave you to sit for another 7 days because I thought we would have been in a position where we could have announced them already. But damn it, you're going to have to wait till next week, folks. So we're going to have to be placated, I guess, by today's guest, who is a cannabis consultant, a medicinal consumer, and a product tester with a background in engineering who designed and installed hydrodynamic solutions. Ooh, I do like the way that sentence works. And he is the UK rep as well for Delta 9 Analytics. He is CBD James. How you doing, brother?
Hey. Yeah, good. Good to finally actually see you in person. Well, see you in face-to-face again. Since the last time.
Yes, well, it'll been the summer of paradise.
It would have been nearly 6 months ago, yeah. Madness.
It is, my COVID and this whole, it's just changed not just the flow of our community and our kind of little micro-culture, but the entirety of the way the world operates. And it's just made everything, I don't know, you can look down and look up and like 2 months are gone and you're like, where did the time go? I didn't do anything.
So I'm saying I've been doing this, nearly 2 years, two and a bit years now, just digitally, like over the airwaves, if you like. And it's, to start with, it was very, very strange talking to a screen and just sitting with your own kind of thoughts. But the conversation does flow if you're on the same sort of page and stuff, where I already know that we are on the same page. We talk about things in a bit of depth and a bit of detail. So, I've been doing this for a few years now, and it's something that's grown. It's a passion within me that's grown every time I speak to you, especially as it kind of leads me on to another pathway, another thing to look into. Like we were just talking about a few things before we started rolling the cameras there, and it's kind of got me thinking again about where do I stand in this community, because I just seem to be the guy that's at these events providing analytics on flowers and providing a form of harm reduction, if you like. Mm-hmm. Whereas this could be bigger. This could be seen as being the first UK testing facility, if you like. Where does it end? Where does the possibilities end?
Well, yeah, I think of a former guest that we had on recently I say recently, man, I've had so many guests. I've forgotten how far we've actually come in all of these episodes. Peter Krykan, who operated arguably the UK's first mobile overdose prevention facility in the back of an ambulance. You know what I mean? It's what you are doing is you're providing a mobile service. I would argue that you don't need a physical location or a fixed premises to be, considered a facility like that, because you are providing that facility in a transient way.
I mean, What I'm doing is I'm providing rapid presumptive tests. So I can tell you whether you're consuming THC or CBD or otherwise. I can tell you within 0.18% whether it's 20%, 21% or otherwise. I mean, it's a rapid test. It takes 30 seconds to provide you with a fairly accurate number.
Mm-hmm.
To take that further, I think there need to be like a laboratory kind of setup where we're actually taking these flowers to an atomic level and we're actually breaking the flower down to tell you exactly what cannabinoids are within this plant matter, whether it be CBG, CBN, CBD, THC, THCA, otherwise.
Yeah, it'd be interesting to be able to break down the other peripheral compounds as well. As we're starting to understand, obviously, a few weeks ago on my blog, Last Week in Weed, I need to figure out a better way of categorizing them because I can't figure out which number it was. We discussed these volatile sulfur compounds, which I've just obviously recently discovered. There's then also cannabinoids or cannabinoids, and it's like a dozen of them or so. And then from there, there's these other, obviously the carbonous sort of compounds. The physical structure of the plant will be different plant on plant because it's bioremediating and accumulating from the soil and the air. So it's to understand and be able to map that. I think, the next level, as you say, is you be able to provide the testing there and then. So somebody walks up, say, as the word paradise, provide you a sample. if there was then a way that you could seal that sample, that then gets posted off to that centralized lab, and they then do that more in depth. So you're providing that front of house service, as it were, which could be replicable in every town and city. You could literally create a team of individuals that could operate this and create that metadata for the community of what is in the community.
And that can be done like by strain as well, Simpa. So you could be having, let's talk about I know Northern Lights. Let's talk about Northern Lights. So something you don't actually see very much now. So you could actually compile a database for Northern Lights from, say, the north of the country to the south of the country, and you could actually show the differences in the plant from area to area as well. And you could actually go as far as showing what does the water quality do to the actual cannabinoids in the plant. Now, that's how far you could take this if you can, once you start manipulating and extrapolating these figures from cannabinoids.
With that, this is something that I've been sort of really interested in recently. Obviously, as part of the work of the Delta 9 Analytics, the machine, the Purple Pod, is that what it's called?
The Purple Pro, yeah.
Purple Pro. It gives you the water level, and I've recently been learning about water activity.
Yes.
And sort
it's
of
very important.
Yeah, and going down this sort of route, and that led me to a thought the other day, and you've just reminded me of it, of the water content, as you say, it's accumulating. You think if you've been a grower, you guys know how much of a pain in the arse, especially as if you're feeding by hand, then buckets and buckets and buckets, and it feels like a vast volume. And you've got to think, so yeah, what is that water? I mean, I'm lucky I live in Durham in the north. We are widely considered to have some of the best water in the country. Yeah. We have an almost perfect pH rate. Until recently, the additives put in by Northumbria were incredibly low as well.
Oh, so, yeah.
So that, for most growers in the north, we don't pH. You know, I mean, a lot of the shops will tell you they don't sell a lot of the pH sticks. Whereas you go somewhere down on the south coast, Jesus Christ.
Mate, I'll do 2 kettles a year down here.
Yeah. So it's mental. So then you think, if that's accumulating in the kettles, in the pipelines, what's exactly that? What is it then doing into as we said, the physical structure of the plant, but then the chemical reactions and the difference in formulation of the compounds.
How does what inside of the plant determines what cannabinoids and what flavonoids and terpenoids and whatever are sacrificed to purge these from the plant?
I mean, exactly that. Anyone will know from growing and knows about like hormone disruption. So light getting in or shocking the plant is the plant that goes, I'm going to do X, Y, Z and finish. That's its goal. Yeah, you then put some into it, unless it's strategically done, which I'll admit there are some people out there that really know their shit. But if you get this wrong, you can hermaphrodize even the most stable of genetics. You can, so then you've got to think that if the plant in and of itself, because it is a diatomaceous plant, in other words, it's supposed to sex itself. But for about 50 years, we've just gone, no, do this, do this.
Yeah.
So, it's only not intelligence, but in that way of trying to create itself. Yeah, what's it do? Because then you've got to think of the air pollution. We talk about it in terms of its carbon sequestration technology. What about volatile organic compounds in homes, in grow rooms from tents? You know, cheap plastic grow room tents with that heat breaking down those organic compounds and then getting them.
It's not being made out of hemp.
Well, I would argue low THC cannabis, because I'm trying not to use the H word, but I completely agree. Exactly that. We know the fibrous material. It's
yeah. It has to be with it. It has to be sustainable.
But the vision is, for me, still that there is enough technology. I mean, I've literally, I'm hoping it doesn't disrupt the recording of this, but I'm waiting for the 14th edition of The Emperor Wears No Clothes, Jack Herrera's sort of Bible, you know what I mean? And I'm accumulating a few books at the minute to try to create a new form of narrative, I guess, even if just for myself, because we don't need to use the safe word of hemp anymore. It's not the soft way into it. In fact, now it's actually it's holding us back, because it then means that people go, well, that's hemp, but this is cannabis. So you're smoking cannabis, but these wonderful things that can save the world is hemp. And it's like, no, guys, it's actually, the more I get high, the more byproducts you have to save the world. Do you understand this mechanism?
I'm helping to save the planet.
Save the world.
Just touching back on what we were saying as well, about the plant sacrificing itself to get rid of impurities and to to combat light stress and things like that. Now, I think we touched on it before when we were at Paradise, and I was talking about like a plant in a whole, like being like if you imagine it as being like a pie chart, and we were talking about potency and saying what's the opinion on these strains that are coming through that are touching 31, 32, etc. percent. Mm-hmm. Yeah, they're strong and they'll absolutely blow your head off. Very, very potent flowers, and they definitely have their place in the market for, I would say, for severe Parkinson's and things like this, 100%. Mm-hmm. But at the same time, these flowers are sacrificing terpenes, they're sacrificing flavours, and they're sacrificing a lot of other things to make up the THC in it. So I drew a pie chart, and I kind of drew it as the 30% being a third of the pie chart, and then another third of the pie chart being like your minor cannabinoids and your flavonoids and things like that. And the rest of it's just like terpenes and, like you're saying, your cannabis matter as well. So you're always going to have at least 5 to 10% of your cannabis matter within the plant. That's your ash. You're never ever going to get rid of that. That is the backbone, the skeleton of the plant. Mm-hmm. So if you're taking 10% of that, you've only got 90% of that plant to make up your major cannabinoids, your THC, your CBD, and everything starts as CBG. Mm-hmm. And then you've got the other 25% to make up your flavours, your taste, your smells, the aromas, everything else that goes along with the plant. And then your 10% of your cannabis matter as well. So I'm in the opinion that the higher the THC is pushed, the less cannabinoids are within the plant. But we're only starting to get the machinery and the science and the data to now start to extract these figures to see exactly where the high numbers are in the cannabinoids, what cannabinoids and what terpenes are producing the potency, pretty much.
Yeah. So this then leads on to a very interesting field of study that I know is being conducted behind closed doors in a lot of the let's just call them what they are these days, pharmaceutical companies, these builders, medical cannabis companies that are now buying up and creating patents for synthetics and isolated compounds that are betraying the legacy of the industry and the people that give them the knowledge and the experience to put them where they are. And the research that they are doing is basically to look at what mitigates high THC, because they're finding this. Yeah. The calls you're now seeing in places like Washington and Colorado to limit extracts because they're seeing psychosis and whatever else. I mean, there's a conversation to be had there, but let's park that for a second and just just assume that there is maybe an idea that a higher increase of THC without a mitigating factor, be it a terpene or other synergistic cannabinoids, in their theory holds to be potentially detrimental. I would argue that we have no science to show that it would be neurologically or physiologically detrimental, but in terms of an argument for lifestyle, there's maybe an argument there. Anything can be abused if you abuse it. That's the nature of reality.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah,
but I think, again, that's down to individual sort of motivation.
That just goes back to your personality. If you've got an addictive personality, then you will tend to find that addiction and addiction abuse is very, very prevalent.
Do you not think that people, because I've been rallying against this recently, but do you think that people that, because I used to describe myself as this as well, as an addictive personality, have a propensity towards escapism?
Oh, 100%.
So I think it's not that we're addicted to substances and we're more likely to abuse substances in that sense.
In a way, you're withdrawn from a situation that you don't want to be in.
It's harm reduction. You're reducing the harm of your reality.
What it is. You don't want to be in reality, so you're withdrawing yourself from reality, reducing the harm, making yourself, in essence, feel better because you're not in that state of mind.
I really wish that, because millions of people do that every day with caffeine, with sugar, with fats, even with with alcohol at the end of the day.
Diabetes is one of the biggest killers in the world, mate, globally. Diabetes, and the number one contributor to diabetes is sugar. Why is sugar pumped into absolutely everything? Why do we need to pump sugar into everything?
Yeah, sugar's a scary one, because obviously sugar's a really good example of how an industry can scapegoat biology, can scapegoat nature.
such a stable compound sugar. It's such a stable hydrocarbon that it can be stored and it can be produced en masse and it can be distributed very, very easily at a very, very low price. And that's why it's such a massive, massive commodity worldwide.
I'd go for it's a drug. We need to start looking at this as what it is. We need to have these conversations as a society, because I've said this for day one. I used to make the joke when I started with my lives all them years ago about the first dealer that any of us are introduced to is Haribo. And it's your mum is the pusher. And she goes, you know what, there's this drug, there's this thing, right? Look how amazing it is. Look at the colors of it. You'll feel, wow, and you get this rush and this power of, oh my God. But only if you behave, only if you do exactly as I say. And they develop this dependency, this relationship with it that goes, okay, if I conform to authority, I get pleasure. And it teaches that principle mechanism. Yeah.
I was quite, I think that's why I think differently, because as a kid, like, I'm allergic to a lot of things. I'm dairy intolerant. I'm allergic to a lot of fats. I'm allergic to a lot of E numbers and colorings and things like that. So I've always been given like healthy treats. I've always been given grapes and fruit and things like that, and I've always been kind of steered away from sweet things. But see now, because I've never had it, my sweet tooth is off the scale. It's off the charts because I never had that as a kid.
It's almost like you never built a tolerance to it.
No. So now if I open up, like even just grapes, mate, if I open up a punnet of grapes, I will finish that punnet of grapes just because it's the sweet, sugary.
It's interesting. I had a very difficult sort of childhood, and because of this, I was very anti-authoritarian for the sort of educational reform centres, for lack of a better way of describing it, I was placed in, or through carers or whatever else. And so I was never really rewarded with the snacks. So I never really got that development. When I got it, it was so fucking rare, or it was like I got caught shoplifting when I was like 7, 6. And it was just literally sweets to be like, I want to look at it. It's in my face. I want to go of that. I've seen these things for years. These kids go crackers for it. On the telly, they tell me it's the best thing in the world. You know what I mean? I want to go with this thing. And so it teaches that sort of feedback. And now as I've got older, I can go months and I'll not eat a thing. But as soon as, like, if the missus like, I'll get a bit something sweet and the pack opens.
Game over.
It's just gone, and then I'm crashing on the sugar, and I'm literally like, my pancreas hurts, I'm sort of bloated, and I'm just like, what the hell? I'm neurologically in a cloud, like, feeling like I need to go to bed. I like, what?
On the verge of having a diabetic coma.
But again, it's because it's not a drug, so we don't look at it that way. But if we actually looked at everything through the same lens as the prohibitionist of cannabis, those people that are going, well, weed has to cause all of these things because it touches on these things, without understanding the interplayed relationships between them. But if we took that view of alcohol, of sugar, of fats, of dairy, even we'd really start to understand that actually probably the most common 10 illnesses in this country, if not worldwide, are entirely preventable. They're lifestyle, caused by lifestyle, caused by diet, caused by environmental exposure.
100%. And people say to me, how do you live without any dairy in your diet? Very, very well.
Yeah.
Really well. I mean, I'm basically a vegan with a meat diet. And people and they're just like, well, where do you get the calcium and stuff? I'm saying that plants are very, very high in carrying calcium.
Yeah, kale is the most abundant calcium source out there.
Yeah. And plant biology and how plants photosynthesize and how they create their food and what nutrients they carry naturally, it's easy. It becomes easy. Yeah.
It's the whole thing of. Because I mean, I was your traditional kind of cliched, meat. The amount of meat I consume plays into the level of masculinity I exude. In my youth, it was kind of like, I can eat that steak, meat, and it was just this kind of false bravado. And then when I went vegetarian for a while, and I was still consuming sort of dairy products, and I didn't sort of yet notice the relationship that I kind of had to it until I'd sort of broken away from it. And then I had the same sort of thing of people like, well, how do you live without consuming these sorts of things? And then I had the few realizations. The one around meat that really got me was, if I now moralistically can't not picture the animal when I see the thing after a really vivid LSD experience I had, then it's about protein, as you're saying. So what's protein delivery? And then somebody told me that you do know that animals eat plants protein to get the protein in the animal. So if you get rid of the animal, you just eat the plant, you're getting the protein without killing the animal. And I went, fuck. And it really just kind of went, that makes sense to me.
See, so I've kind of used that analogy to in the conversation in a way that I wanted it to go. So we're talking about us feeding our bodies and what we are putting into our bodies, right? When people are growing these plants for medication and they're pumping them full of these hardeners and these plant growth regulators and these plant steroids, as I like to call them, the only people that they are duping is the end consumer. Because they're then, I mean, it's all down to, it's a massive debate going on at the minute. Is it okay to be putting them in the flowers?
This is the thing of it. I mean, there is not one current supplier, and I suppose now we'll tactfully move into this realm of prescription cannabis as a conversation topic. There is not one supplier or producer in Europe, as far as I'm aware, that is a true organic supplier. The way they've got around their regulations and their licensing is to produce cannabis to a pharmaceutical standard in good manufacturing practiced facilities.
White coat environments.
Yeah, but we've seen that on the BBC. We've seen the spider mite. We've seen the molds. We've seen, obviously, this is GW. I'm alluding, allegedly GW grows here in the UK. Got to make sure I get that on record. But yeah, so if then they're not organics, and then you look at this craft market, this artisan market, these demon black market, as they like to call us, these drug dealers, and you're like, no, I follow people on Instagram that are no-till gardeners. These guys are teaching actual gardeners how to garden again. These people are saving people's outdoor normal backyards using techniques that these guys are perfecting in grow rooms.
Yeah, give me 1 second.
Yeah, no worries.
Thank you.
See, and I was worried it'd be a package for me that would interrupt it. So, something to pay.
Amount due £1.50.
Actually, you should. I know it's not because postage can't take cash, but it's so much easier. Which one? Mate, can I just? You've got the package in your hand right now.
See, the thing is, Davey would have probably just brought it and he would have paid the £1.50 for me because I've known the postie that long now. If I'm not in, mate, he opens the door and sticks the parcels in the door. That's the kind of guy he is. That's
a dying breed of service.
Mate,
that's quite interesting about this prescription system is that going the extra mile and then creating this obfuscated responsibility through bureaucracy, them going, well, the posties for their own safety can't carry cash. That's why they can't take that money off you. So you have to then pump carbon in the environment to get in a vehicle to then drive to them to then pick up the parcel or the package. It's an absurdity.
Man, and see, just while we're talking about it as well, how come flour from a legal dispensary can be distributed via courier without any licensing?
I think I know this. So allegedly, big allegedly here, folks. I don't know why I went all Trump there for a second. The supplier is not being told. I'm not going to name the one of the major companies that were involved, but I heard of an anecdote of a patient who spoke to a courier who was then delivering their thing, and they were regular kind of like, oh, what is this thing you see, and they discussed what it was, and the courier went back and discussed with their sort of higher ups, and they weren't aware that they were delivering an illicit substance, illegal substance.
There may be copies of telephone conversations circling at the minute with very, let's just say, I need to watch what I say here.
Well, this is all allegedly.
Allegedly, there's transcripts going around of conversations held by a certain person where they openly admit that the failings of Project 2021. Mm-hmm. And this is coming from a superintendent's level.
Yeah, so
allegedly.
Yeah. So again, speaking, I guess let's create a hypothetical situation, because in all terms, we're allowed to discuss hypotheticals entirely. Yeah. So theoretically, there is a system here in the UK of prescribed cannabis, and has been since 2018. So the law changed in, the 1st of November in 2018. And we were kind of told that we'd be able to get NHS access, and there was going to be sort of a slow onboarding. Initially, effectively 3 prescriptions were written, and then the creation of several private clinics. The clinics were then partnered with their own individual pharmacies in this theoretical model. So there was obviously a potential, not conflict of interest, but a network building there of everybody being involved with everybody else.
It's a competitor, yeah.
Yeah. And so then as that then has evolved and moved sort of forward, this project 2021 was created as an idea that it would work with some of the elements within that microcosm of an industry, with the pharmacies that are then procuring from the regulators.
It was basically to provide a subsidiary for medical patients.
For data sets. So yeah, the Project 21 was obviously to create data that was to go towards the NHS to prove or show the safety and efficacy of cannabis and cannabinoid products for the treatment of various ailments. Yeah, so obviously this was initiated before the current pandemic, I guess, that we're still living consequentially under, which we'll park over there because that's definitely a whole kettle of fish. Yeah, so from 20,000 patients, which was initially the first estimate that they wanted, I read recently that I think her name is Mags, I can't remember her last name, the current head of the project, said that they had just over 1,000 patients signed up. So this is about 5% of their initial uptake. This is why they've extended this into 2020 to the end of 2022 to try and get this other set. But then allegedly, from transcripts that may or may not be floating about various social media platforms currently, it is speculated, and not even speculated, I would say it is an individual who is from one of those establishments admits that there is potentially intentional sabotage from the sponsors, and that is to say the providers of product to Project 21, which has then caused issues throughout their supply chain and a big backlash in the community, which I would personally, for my own speculation, state could arguably said to be intentional to push towards one or two major players.
Yes.
I think everything we've said there is fair to say.
Yeah, and to speculate as well, we need to be careful. Yeah, allegedly these transcripts, this person had made a telephone call, and it was well out of let's say operating hours, business hours as well. So this conversation was made after in the evening or whatever, after a few drinks had been taken and things like that. And I think things had been said out of context by the person, and they've been unaware that the conversation's been recorded. But at the same time, when you're having a conversation like that with a patient, it needs to be on a professional level, in my opinion.
Indeed. So if I were to have heard the conversation, my takeaway from it would have been that, again, it was not a very professional setting for that conversation to occur. I don't think that the individual in question would have been aware that they would have been recorded. There are going to be some issues around data protection potentially here, and I think there needs to be a conversation about whistleblowing protection for the individual that instigated the recording for their own personal protection, because the size of the I don't want to say opposition.
Yeah,
it could be enormous, because again the way allegedly I'm trying to say
the allegations that are put forward are basically on a scale. For what I'm reading on the Reddit and the subreddit groups, the allegations that are put forward to this dispensary are on a scale that will see the dispensary having to close shop. Basically, they will have no integrity left to stand up and fight any sort of legal battle. But on this, like you're saying, on the same foot that we've got the data protection, and we've got the case where the guy's obviously breached certain guidelines, but he's been led down a rabbit hole in a way as well.
We're lucky in this country in terms of there are certain protections, especially with working with accredited journalists in terms of informant protection, whistleblowing regulations,
medical professionals and stuff as well.
Exactly. So there's some good conversations obviously to be had quietly and off camera in the hours, days and weeks that sort of follow this. But I think that what this is going to do ultimately is make a lot of other people go, huh. And there are thousands of people in this system. There's what estimated to be just shy of 10,000 people connected via all of the clinics currently. And the percentage of disgruntled consumers, as a way of describing them, I guess, that I have already come across in just a few weeks of kind of really trying to bring some attention to this, and then talking to other people like yourself. Sorry, go on.
It's been too much in such a short period of time.
And obviously we're being told that it's a new industry, it's finding its feet, there's going to be bugs, glitches.
But to say it's a new industry is fair enough. It's a new industry. It's new in the UK, to speak. It's a new platform. The market itself has been around for thousands of years. It's been the market in the States is very successful. The market in Canada and the tolerance and obviously Europe and stuff as well. It's all a very successful market. Mm-hmm. So to say it's new and stuff like that, it seems to me that the patient's interests are not being put first.
Agreed. So then it comes down to continue the speculation from a hypothetical model that we've just built, which is separate from the current model that exists. If they're not then meeting the patient's end need, is it one of potentially two things? Greed in terms of financial interest, or is it, or could it also be an intentional desire to try to paint the production, cultivation, and creation of kind of raw cannabis in floral form en masse, make it look too difficult and go, this is why you need these synthetics and you need these oils and you need these tested, standardized compounds. And because as we've discussed before, the industry actually looks at anything in cannabis other than cannabinoids as a contaminant.
Yeah.
So if that's the way they're looking at this, to me, it very much feels like, of course, they're going to not even massage, but allow problems that can occur at the scale they're trying to produce to proliferate, so they can then point at it and go, this is why it won't work, but we'll then quietly still grow at that level, but produce it into oil and other products, and we're supposed to go, what, that negates the safety? It's
like they're trying to create like a sterile product, if you like. They're trying to create a product that is just one thing. That is,
here's is in their words, medical cannabis. It is available in 5 ratios of CBD to THC, and that is it. Anything outside of that is a raw contaminant, dangerous street drug that causes psychosis and addiction.
Yeah, pretty much. They want to have an organic flower that basically is, or a plant matter that is 17% indica or 10% indica and 10% CBD, or vice versa. They want to have it to the point where they can actually manipulate these genetics to say, right, we're going to grow a plant that's going to be 10%, or we're going to grow a plant that's 14% or 18%. Now, I know, everybody knows that flowers are living, breathing things. They decide on their own what they're going to produce, depending on what you feed them, when you feed them, how much light, how much air, how much CO2. There are so many variables to determine. So if you are trying to grow an organic material that's going to fluctuate between 6% from the top of the plant to the bottom of the plant, how can you regulate something in a jar or in a packet and dispense that to a patient and claim that it's going to be 20%?
This is why we often say
it's impossible.
Cannabis doesn't fit into the traditional model of pharmacology, and it's because there's an argument to be made here that the entirety of human history and our holistic sort of relationship, symbiotic relationship with nature and with things like with cannabis, then there is the creation of pharmacology, frankly. And so it's this idea that they've then chased single compounds to reduce single symptoms of illness. Yeah, we're a century and a half plus in with the invention of the hypodermic needle, and now the discovery of things like cancers and things like that. And they're more they're proliferating more than ever. Yeah, so cancer's now one in two people, as you were saying before, about diabetes and all this other shit, and we know what's causing it. Yet the other side of it, they're still producing the things that cause it, while then selling you the cure for what they've caused.
Yeah, and it's false economy in a way, because you're buying the things that are creating the end results. And that's, I keep saying, I know I keep harking back to like the legal flower market and whatever, but at the same time, like they're producing flowers that are supposed to be a set percentage or a set prescription. Now, if you've got a headache and you go into, let's go down the route where, just say you've got a severe heart condition and you need to have 75 milligrams of a set prescription every day. So you take that set prescription every day, and then by luck you find a strain that works really well for your heart condition. You manage to wean yourself off of these heart pills that have been that have been synthesized. So they're synthetic compounds that have been made to control this problem that you've got. You find an organic solution to this problem, you wean yourself off these pills, and then all of a sudden your organic medication drops by 20%.
Yeah, exactly that. As of whether you've then got top of the flower or bottom of the flower is something that I've heard rumored, because a lot of the international producers in Canada and Israel and a few other places that are really getting on board with the international export, they are creating two-tier. They crop the top of the plant, and that goes to the adult consumer market where it makes more money. They then crop the bottom of the popcorn, and that goes to the medicinal market, to the prescribed market. And because so again, even that you're seeing, and you're going to know from if you're a grower, it's different.
And I know, because I've tested it over plants.
But genetic expression as well. So there is. Oh, good boy. There is an argument to be made that, as we were talking about before, there's only amount of time in the cannabis plant's production when it moves through its photo period into flowering. It's then got a window when it's like, I want to be done by this. Otherwise, it starts to trigger other hormones to then create the little bananas. So it's then going. It's almost the thing of it going, well, I haven't served my purpose. What's my second purpose? Is to proliferate, to try again.
Or it's to try and reproduce.
Exactly. Yeah. So it's going through that sort of well, I've lost my point. So we're going through that period of production for the plant. I'm trying to gain that thought back. I think I've lost it. Crashed it. Derailed that thought.
Yeah, the plant in essence is just going to die off. It's not going to produce anything else. Mm-hmm. It's you're only going to get to a point in the plant's life where it's going to be producing THC, and then once you get to that,
I remembered. Saying that the development of the plant's different. So then we typically crop from the top of a plant, because the trichomes will move into amber first at the highest exposure to UV. Yeah. But then when you're into the bottom of the canopy, dependent on the light exposure, it means that it's earlier on in their production. So you're going to have different branch cannabinoids in there, but you're also going to have different expressions of terpenes. And we're now starting to understand that it's not just the primary terpenes, but it's the way that they're then operating together in a synergy creates then other effects. So we're actually starting to recognize that about 3% of a few little things together are affecting you more than that 30% of the cannabinoids.
Entirely. Yeah. But you need to remember, like, a plant feeds from the bottom to the top down again. So you're always going to have maximum potency on your top colas. That's always going to be where you're going to test your highest. You're going to get your highest readings off your flowers. It's like what we're talking about before as well. The bottom of your plant is never ever getting as much light exposure. It's never getting as much air circulating. It's never getting as much feed because it's always the last thing that's going to be fed, unless you're growing in a way where you're training your plants to grow in a certain way, whether it be mainlining and things like that. But if you're not doing that, you're going to get a plant that varies almost sometimes up to 6% between the top and the bottom. Yeah. And if you're only producing 21 or 22% off your flowers, then it's a massive difference over 50 centimeters.
So this is interesting then. So if we're having all of this variance in our own supply, so individuals that have then decided to cultivate a few cultivars themselves, that they've gone, these really work for me. Boom, there's my bedtime, there's my wake up, there's my midday, there's some fun. As you say, they have the difference and variance in the jar, and they're able to self-regulate whatever condition that they may have weaned themselves off whatever pill. And I think the difference is that the synthetics and the pharmaceuticals that are then created, as we say, they're symptom management drugs, they're maintenance drugs. So it's about as long as you take this infinitum, you won't have this symptom. They're not looking for cures. Whereas I think that, not to say that cannabis is a panacea or a cure-all, but there's research that every now and then pops up and disappears of this idea of chronic endocannabinoid deficiency syndrome, that there is an underlying and arcing cause of illness for the vast majority of ailments, everything from Crohn's, fibromyalgia, cluster headaches, because it's all part of this proliferal network of the proliferal aspects of the endocannabinoid system. Yeah. So all this research on runner's high that then was like, no, that's endogenous cannabinoids. And they're going, oh, well, in yoga and these mystic practices. And they're like, well, no, that's cannabinoids. And sex and blah, blah. And no, that's cannabinoids. And it's slowly starting to build this picture that, wait a minute, if all we are is beings that run with an endogenous system of something, that we can take an exogenous thing of it and regulate it, why the hell are we not taking it?
Exactly. The perfect point just to prove this, right? So you take any hard drugs, so you take any ecstasy, cocaine, heroin, anything like that, your body purges this out of your system within maximum a week. So your body wants to get rid of this. It will purge it. You'll sweat, you will vomit, you will get rid of this out of your system as quick as you possibly can. Mm-hmm. You smoke a joint or you vape some flower or whatever, and your body's clinging on to that for as long as it possibly can. It stores it in your hair follicles, it stores it in your nails, it stores it in your inside your fat cells, it stores it everywhere. Why is it holding on to it?
Yeah, exactly that. And it's because there is this...
Because your body needs it. Your body needs it. You naturally produce cannabinoids within your body. Yeah. It was only a couple of years ago that I really discovered CBD as a medicine. I'd heard it, I knew what it was, I've understood it as a compound, but it was only a couple of years ago that I actually really understood the benefits that it comes with. Obviously, with all my allergies and stuff, I've got a really, really bad intestinal tract. My stomach is so sensitive to certain foods and certain food groups. And it's only until I started using CBD on quite a high level that I've noticed that my diet is kind of stabilised. I wouldn't say I'm able to eat foods that I wasn't able to eat before. I can tolerate more of certain things. I can eat a wider variety of things without having massive effects. But the CBD in a whole has completely changed the way that I actually look at food now.
I've just had a thought there, and I don't know the answer to my own question here, but I'm going to pitch this to the world just as a thought. The environmental factors obviously can then lead to external causes of internal dysregulation and illness. Yeah. What if there's then an idea of then you have this deficiency, like lack of vitamin C leads to scurvy sort of thing, that if where there's an absence of cannabinoids, but then what if it's not the keep the kids away from weed, that an absence of, say, breast milk, because anandamide, the bliss molecule, which is THC, if you weren't breastfed, I wonder if you could...
Breastfed. That's me.
Yeah, so I'm wondering if there's then I don't know if I was. So I'm just trying to think, like, I wonder if there is a correlation in data sets there of babies that weren't given access to breast milk and the mom's anandamide to trigger, because we know that, like, when a baby's born, if you don't give it light and stimulate its eyes, the eyes will die. They won't fucking work. The same with touch. You need to stimulate external systems. So if they've not been given access to endogenous cannabinoids in that way, it won't turn on or stimulate their systems. They're living in a perpetual state of dysregulation and
animation,
deficiency.
Like animation, if you like, isn't it? Where your gut is basically, it's there, but it's not being brought into life. It's like
it'll be triggered later through foods and through other activities, so it will come about. But because it wasn't,
are these the right foods? Are these the right foods triggering it though? Are you triggering it with the right foods?
So what's baby formula? So we obviously know that Johnson & Johnson got sued for various things in baby powders and yet these companies make these powders that we give to babies in substitute of these anandamide rich breast milk. So there's other hormones and other things in there, but yeah, again, there's going to be endogenous cannabinoids. There is in that connection a continuation of that symbiosis of endocannabinoid system between mother and child.
So that's why they should give animal milk. They should still be providing some form of animal milk, but it needs to have colostrum in it, because the colostrum is basically a supercharged endocannabinoid shot, if you like.
So basically,
I think you've touched on something here that needs to be looked into further.
I know a couple of doctors that'd be interested to explore that concept, because that is
because I've never. Obviously, I'm lactose intolerant, so I was straight on to goat's milk when I was a kid, because I would not feed. So that is, it's possibly in turn created the intestinal tract that I have.
Well, we're starting to understand now about gut intelligence, that actually there is more neurological activity, more development and creation of neuroregulatory chemicals and compounds in the gut. Like all this conversation about DMT production, all these things of the signals sort of that are sent back and forth, that was the more sophisticated we get with understanding it, but it falls against our traditional idea of, well, no, you're here, you are here. And well, maybe you're really not. You are not here. You are in all of this. And then there's the idea that there's more foreign bacterial cells than there is human cells in you. You are a universe of this symbiosis and connection, and that cannabinoids are regulating such a large internal system that then touches on so many other peripheral systems, that it is the mycelium of your body. It is that interspace connection of all of the cells. So if anything needs to talk, the neurotransmitters are fucking cannabinoids.
Yeah, so well, basically how I got into this where I am just now is a couple of years ago I had a bad accident, and I've ended up with degeneration in spine. So I found out I've got spinal degeneration. So what's happening is my spine is slowly kind of crumbling away, and it's trapping the nerves in between the discs. Yeah. So at the moment I've got chronic sciatica down my right hand side. So I was paralysed about last year until I had a few operations and stuff. But I'll not go too much into that. But basically how I now got to where I am is that I was sitting reading about nerve reproduction and nerve growth and stimulation and things like that. So I started looking into CBD flower and CBD oils and things like that to try and stimulate the nerves back into life, and to see if it's maybe something that I could maybe help cure, well, not cure, but help alleviate some of the symptoms, if you like. Yeah. And it's just grown from there. The more I've understood certain cannabinoids and certain terpenes and what these can do in conjunction with each other, it's just spiraled out of control. Now that I realise what certain terpenes benefits certain terpenes have and what benefits certain cannabinoids have. Pairing these two together with certain amounts of THC and CBD are like the holy grail. I've come off of pretty much every pharmaceutical drug that was thrown to me. I can list through tramadol, diazepam, codeine, fentanyl patches were mentioned at one point, slow-release morphine, MST. I could go on and on and on with the amount of pills that I was taking. And for then to now, in the space of about 18 months, slowly coming, and it's taken me 18 months to wean off these pharmaceuticals. It's taken me that long. No, I would have quite happily just stopped them straight away and went straight on to using cannabinoids. But it's taken me 18 months to go through the whole withdrawal process because I was on that high amounts of pharmaceuticals. And it's now that I can actually think and look back on the past it's over 2 years now, and think, why are they giving people so many opiates to combat pain and to combat nerve pain and pain that can easily be combated with cannabinoids? Simple as that, with cannabis.
A lot of it's they've ended up prescribing for social sedation, an individual placation, because people want a pill, they want that interaction, and then that pill's going to give them 4 side effects. So then they want a pill for those 4 side effects. Then that's going to make them lethargic, so then they can't go to work. So then they're quite depressed and they're a bit anxious about their life because they can't afford to pay for the rent. So then they want more of an escape from it. So then it becomes like, well, actually, pain manifests. We know that there is this idea that through mechanisms like cortisol and whatever else, that consciousness manifests as inflammation and pain in the body. And that if you become immobile and lethargic and you don't walk and apathetic, your muscles atrophy. You can't hold the own weight of your own body. So, this hurts. And instead of the doctor going, well, how much are you walking? How are you this? And doing a physical overhaul of you, they then go down, well, the list says next I give you this one. Then next I give you this one, they're professional drug dealers at this point, and the vast majority of them are still not given anywhere near an education on the endocannabinoid system. It's consensus science now. It is basically it is undisputed in every territory that I'm aware of in the world that humans and mammals have an endocannabinoid system, and that the neurotransmission properties and the way that it works is for signaling in the body and for the other systems we can't dispute that.
No, my specialist said to me, she's after I told her obviously about getting prescribed flower and everything. She was like, she said, I don't know if I want to keep you as a patient or not because you're being prescribed medicinal flower. And I was like, what do you mean? And she's like, is it because I'm not taking the prescription that you're advising, or is it because there's something else? Or
you're making her uncomfortable.
That's exactly what it was. She says she openly admitted that she never had enough education on actual cannabis to be making any judgments.
Yeah, exactly that. She's only got her own personal informed opinion. Sorry, my cat's coughing up a hairball in the background.
It's a very new medication, and then now obviously went into detail about it being thousands of years old, and obviously referenced a few uses and history and things like that. And she was saying, but I basically asked her, why am I having to basically appeal for this?
Sorry, he's been a drama queen. I'm just worried about him. All right. Oi. Yeah, sicked up a hairball. Lovely. Bless him. But it's so. Just made me think that were you consuming cannabis sort of previous to this, before then seeking to use it therapeutically?
I used it as when I was younger. I used it for when I was about 17 to my early 20s, and then I actually I got headhunted to go and work in Australia doing restoration work on sheet metal and copper work and zinc work and stuff like that. So it's where the water flow and stuff comes back into my previous occupation. I understand how water works and the way that water moves and things like that. So it was basically going to do a job that nobody else knew how to do.
Yeah.
So I was over there living the life. I was just getting flown all over the place, working, doing things, living life. So cannabis kind of took a back seat. I was too busy enjoying other things, if you like. Stayed away from it for a long time. I come home, I went back to work, and then I hurt my back. I hurt my back. I put my back out. I slipped the L4, L5 vertebrae in my spine, and I started getting all these medications, these painkillers, and whatever. My back got a bit better. The discs went back in. Thankfully, it was okay the first time. I weaned off the medication. It took me about 9 months to a year to get off the meds. Then it happened again about a year later. And then this time it was massive. There was no any going back this time. It was in operations, caudal epidurals. I was paralysed down one side. I was on crutches. I couldn't walk.
Jesus, man.
And they just started feeding me tablet after tablet after tablet. And you just keep taking these pills. We'll get to the bottom.
Why wouldn't you? Yeah, it'll fix it. Of course, the doctors.
Going for MRI scans. I was going for nerve root injections. I've been going for facet stiffeners. You name it, mate. They've thrown absolutely everything at me. And I basically got offered a chance to try the medical cannabis, and I jumped at the chance because I had used it before. I knew that it was a massive painkiller. After a hard day at work, it was good to relax with a joint at the end of the day. And I didn't want to smoke it because I stopped smoking, so I started vaporising it. And the flavour, when you're vaporising it, is completely different to when you smoke it. And it was actually really enjoyable. And I actually I'll be honest, I started enjoying it as well. And that's kind of, I got the passion back again for it. And then I started reading up more on CBD flower and the benefits that this hemp flower could bring. So I was like, I'm going to try and source some of this stuff. So I went online. Oh, you can get stuff in the UK. Let's try the stuff that you can source here in the UK. It was absolutely ridiculous. The landmines and the minefields that I had to get through to get reputable flower in the UK was practically non-existent. I actually had to contact a company in the Netherlands who was Purple Pro to talk about how I could test flowers to see what was THC, CBD and otherwise, and that's how I got on to the testing side of things. But I digress anyway. We got finally a good contact for the CBD flower. It was a European contact, but we were still in the EU at the time. So the gentleman decided that he wanted to send a job lot. So he sent me a job lot of flower, and I tested the flower. It come back. It was really nice. It was like a vanilla kind of strain. It tested. It was about 13-14%. Pretty potent CBD flower. I think it had 0.3, 0.4% THC, which I think was over. I think it's over the UK limit for what was permitted at the time, which has completely changed now. And I started vaping this flower, and the changes within about 6 weeks were miraculous. I started getting like motor function back in my legs. I started like feeling my like I'd lost the sensation in my toes and stuff. I started getting the feeling back in my toes. I started getting my appetite back because obviously the opiates were killing my appetite and everything. It was just, within the space of 2 months, I knew straight away. I said, this is what I need to do. I need to be focusing on cannabinoids, terpenes, and what I can put into my body, rather than what a scientist can create in a lab to put into my body. Like,
see, yeah, it's interesting. I want to circle back to this these air quote hemps, these industrial low THC cultivars that are being imported and stuff. But just wanted to pitch sort of this idea I've been working on sort of for a while. We break down sort of the branch exogenous cannabinoids through or again, really loose science at the minute because no one's incentivized to look at it. But then the metabolism and conversion of cannabinoids. So taking in CBD and converting in THC and converting them into the metabolites. So it's we've not done enough science yet to understand kind of what that mechanism there is is it just get cannabinoids in, the system will figure out what it wants it to look like and put it through.
Yeah, or are you focusing on certain cannabinoids?
Yeah, because then what I'm sort of really early days on in my own head of what I'm thinking about this is that it's almost like just consume cannabis as long as there's a good amount of cannabinoids. I think it's still leading to the same outcome. And my brain's going, it's not that there's so much difference between them or not, or the psychoactivities, you can either choose to go the psychoactive route or not. Basically, what I'm feeling. So you can either add in the spicy element or you can not, but it's all then still cannabis, however we want to look at it. And I think that if we can really zoom out of hemp over here and kind of, well, that's CBD, so it's good over here, and that's THC, so it's bad, and just go, wait, it's fun. Yeah, exactly. So just look at it as it's cannabis sativa L. Yes, there's different expressions in its taxonomy in terms of ruderalis, sativa, and indica, but the chemistry of the plant produces CBG first, breaks down into these branch cannabinoids, it breaks into these. It then produces terpenes that break into sequester terpenes.
And then the genetics decide what it's going to be.
Yeah, so if we can just put that on a table for a second and just go, that's cannabis, and stop all the politicizing and all the bullshit. And if everybody can get on board and that is what cannabis is, it's this plant that does this, that through that mechanism creates these, and then understand how we actually interact with that. Because at the minute, it feels like there's entire swaths of industry being developed around the idea that street weed or illegal and unregulated cannabis, as it's now known, causes psychosis. It's addictive and dangerous. But I had Mike Barnes on this podcast very, very early days of this, and I asked him about psychosis in the industry. And it's like, did people worry in the prescribed industry about psychosis? Not at all. And so it's then, why have we got a narrative on one side that says that it's dangerous?
I think that's something that maybe come in with Nixon and stuff in America, though. I think it's all like the propaganda and stuff that was brought in with it. So you'll get psychosis if you smoke this crazy drug. I think there's still a lot of propaganda that was brought in to kind of stick it on people that are actually consuming this plant. But
there is issues still that are measurable. Unfortunately, small minority of individuals that seem to develop problematic relationships with cannabis. There often seems to have.
But you're going to get that with everybody, though, Simpa. You're going to get that with people who become alcoholics. You're going to get that with people who decide to use heroin. You're going to get that with people who decide that they've got eating disorders. It's how you approach a relationship with a certain substance.
Entirely so, but for the way that I was kind of coming at it with this thought process was that if then consuming cannabis, be it spicy or vanilla, for two very extreme fucking differentials there, and the end result is then being supplementation of the endocannabinoid system. But then some people are having an issue with it. There are people that I'm not saying claim, there are allegations. There are people that say that they have consumed cannabis and had psychotic breaks. There are people that have recent cases even of people that have allegedly consumed cannabis edibles and then killed their partner, for example, and have then got limited sentences of mitigation because of cannabis consumption. So they're setting a precedent of stating that cannabis intoxication caused their psychosis. So we're in a very grey area at the minute in terms of what is the consensus science, if you get what I'm saying. Because if you talk to some people, the medical students are going, well, as long as it's our cannabis, you will never get psychosis, as long as it's taken as prescribed. And then you've got the dealers going, well, I've never seen anybody in my life. I've dealt and grown for 50 years, never seen anybody. And then you've got pockets of legal areas around the world where it's regulated and it's being created by mass market with cannabis hypermesis syndrome and people getting ill and dying off vapes. And that's not legacy market. That's suddenly appeared because of the regulated legal markets.
Yeah. I keep saying to everybody, if you went out to source flower for yourself off this legacy market and you go out and somebody turned up with flower that you were not happy with or you did not like the look at, you would not purchase that flower. Mm-hmm. Simple as that. You get sent this prescribed flower out. It gets sent by courier, it gets sent to the door, it's in a packet that's never been opened in its life until it's arrived at your front door, and you get it, and you open it up, and the flower's either substandard or otherwise And what are you supposed to do if that's your medication for the next 30 days?
It's a form of entrapment. I mean, exactly that. Imagine, the image that we're sold of the youth on the bike, and you text a dodgy number and he pulls up and you're at least going to get to see that he's going to pull out a bag and be like, I have a smell. He's got to sell it to you. He's got to, even the weed sells its goddamn self, but because of the availability and ubiquity, I mean, obviously there are, again, some people, and we speak of a point of privilege, both of us, there are some people that know one guy in the weed world, and that's that one person they've got access to, so they're a victim to that, they're swaying morality,
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, but so for the people that I guess we're speaking of in that sense, yeah, you kind of think, I don't want that, no, go away. And that guy's either then going to go, all right, I'll take £10 off it, or they'll negotiate in that position. But then the legal providers are entrapping you and going, sign here. Now this is legally your property. You may look at it and see if you want it. I can reject an Amazon parcel and it has to go back and go through a policy. Yeah. There's consumer protections that are supposed to be in place there.
I'll talk about a scenario that happened to me personally. Now, I received flour from a dispensary. I won't mention any names or whatever. I won't mention any flour. But I received flour from a dispensary, and the flour was rotten. It was mouldy. Now, it was tested. It was looked under the microscope. It was run. It was put through analytics. It was tested. Now, the dispensary are aware that I have testing facilities at my disposal, and they know that I can test the percentages on their flours. So I called up the chief superintendent, the superintendent of the dispensary personally, spoke to him personally, and obviously described what had arrived at my door. He assured me that someone would be along to pick up the flour within 3 days, and that my prescription would be replaced before the end of the week, because I only had enough flour to last me till the end of the week. That was what I had left in my prescription. Mm-hmm. Now, they come and collected the rotten flour. They came and took it away, and it took me 113 days to get my prescription replaced. 113 days for a dispensary to replace my prescription. After just telling you earlier about obviously the 18 months it's taken me to withdraw off with all of these opiates and everything like that. So
sorry to interrupt a second. I take it then this dispensary obviously had no weed. They surely couldn't have then signed on more clients while they're not providing you with the medication that you've legally supposed to have been.
Excuses I could have wrote War and Peace with the amount of excuses that I had that my notes had been lost. I'd been put on a different portal. I'd been put on a different scheme. That had been swapped over. That they had new staff. That the person no longer worked there. That my notes had been lost. The GP had the doctor hadn't sent over the prescription. My prescription had been processed. Now I had phoned in excess of 50 times on hold for in excess of 2 hours sometimes, speaking with managing directors of these companies, etc., etc., etc. To wait over, I think it was 120 odd days by the time I actually received the flour again. And then the flour got discontinued 3 days later.
Did you find that product to be of use as well?
No, because the product was actually purchased and relabeled as something else.
So it's interesting. It's because I have seen documents from a very reputable organization in the UK that I'm not going to name because I don't believe they've made the documents public yet, of evidence that shows this mislabeling, this deliberate rebranding and packaging between certain dispensaries. So there seems to be at least it's conspiracy in the literal sense of the term, in terms that more than 2 people have come together to create something in secret.
It's a racketeering system in place, isn't it?
Ultimately, yeah, it's exploitative because, as you alluded to and spoke of earlier in this podcast, is that the only people that are really losing here is the end consumer. And the end consumer at the end of this isn't somebody that is choosing to just have a bit of fun, as it were. We can argue, obviously, your adult consumption, medical, and all the rest of your false dichotomies. But at the end of the day, the people that have gone first through this door in a lot of senses, are some of the most vulnerable, are some of the most novice into this industry, don't know this plant, but they have seen for decades, they've watched the mainstream media simultaneously say it's a dangerous street drug that's killing your kids, while watching the world grow up around it, reading the Daily Mail and reading a story of how it's causing psychosis here, but America made $4 billion on it. And Canada's legalizing, and this happened, and this. And so that's formulating their decision. As soon as they're told that the white coats that they've trusted their entire life can provide them this service, it's not the kid on the bike, they'll go and they'll do this. So I feel really, really genuinely bad for the people who are in this position, because there are either people that are going, let's test this system, let's have a go. Or like I said, a chunk of them are people that really fucking need this and are not aware, or are so indoctrinated into the belief that the legacy market can't provide them what they need. They can't provide what they need. Do you know what I mean? And it's really disconcerting that they've taken the first step, but then they've been disempowered by the system.
It's a shame as well, because we're the biggest exporter on the globe, the medicinal flowers. We're the biggest exporter. We grow the most, we sell the most, we make the most in revenue. But these companies are not owned by British people.
Wait,
they're grown in Britain, but why is the money not being seen in the British economy?
Well, the GW thing is obviously into production of oils. As far as I'm aware, they're not selling bulk flour. No. But obviously Epidiolex in America alone is a huge market, because all the research and all of the evidence that's been proven by people like Charlotte Figge around what cannabinoids can do, again, to allude back to our thing of if they're then converting internally, endogenously, it almost doesn't matter what cannabinoids they are. It's about what you can tolerate personally for your own therapeutic dose. That isn't to demonize or shame anybody that can't handle, I'm air quoting there for my listeners, high THC, because that's not what I'm saying at all. We all have a personal tolerance relationship and should be allowed to create and fluctuate at any given time how we want to interact with this plant. And so they've weaponized that in the production of this Epidiolex thing, while then at the same time, they're growing this skunk #1 strain while perpetuating skunk psychosis here in the UK. And it's this paradox that they simultaneously are owning and operating the system, but then limiting it and then not connecting it, because GW is not part of the supply chain. GW was sold to Jazz Pharmaceuticals, and they are off independent because they are not a raw cannabis producer. They are a cannabinoid based medical product. Yeah, exactly. So it just leaves us in this interesting situation that, as you say, us producing the most medical product, as it were, definably, I think still, versus then this new market that's come on, which means we're importing from Canada, from Israel, from Colombia and places like that, all these proliferal markets.
I've had stuff from Australia, Ontario. I've had stuff from Israel. I've had,
and it's going to get worse as they onboard South America. Look, they're starting to now push into Paraguay and Peru and places like that, because it's exploitation of cheap labor. They want to be able to cultivate en masse in areas where it is geographically beneficial, where they can exploit local governments to divert waterways, to disrupt and destroy biodiversity, to negate the carbon sequestration potential of this, to actually then destroy this material instead of creating the future, instead of actually trying to...
You've got in Australia, you've got endless amount in Australia. Israel's the same sort of climate. South Africa are getting in on the scene now as well, because they've got the same sort of climate. Canada, you've got endless amounts of water for irrigation and stuff, and they've got the climate for growing outside as well for the short growth period that they have.
This is what high hybridization of technology means, that actually technically if you used it to create like graphene supercapacitors, if you made fucking cannabis batteries out of this shit and you then made all of the physical materials, you could grow in your light season the cannabis to then build the infrastructure to grow through your dark season, through the winter and autumn periods. And then, like you say, with smart technology, being involved in hydrodynamics, about how you can use economic principles to reduce and maximize water flow. We can use modern hydroponic and aquaponic and airponic and all kinds of different variant technologies to really create and maximize biomass.
It's about producing the very maximum for the very finest input. So the least input you can put in for the maximum output. That's what they want, and that's what the white coat environments provide. because they've got such control over the parameters that they can control things to 0.1, 0.2 of a degree, and they can control the relative humidity and the VPD to 0.1%.
But what's that actually gaining the end consumer? If you think about it, what they're trying to do is they want standardization, homogenization of their crops, because they want a plant that's going to behave the same way. They want to clone it and put down 10,000 of it, and it grow to exactly the same height. It all behave the same way, be pest resistant, mold resistant.
Plants don't do that. Plants naturally genetically mutate.
We even cannabis, again, they don't get too spiritual in it. This intrinsic technology of being a very sexually repressed diatomaceous plant means that you put a bunch of the females together, and I swear to God, no one's validated me on this, but I'm gonna put this into the record again. That I believe the nature of it. Then they all recognizing, I know we need a male up in here. And there's a forced hermaphrodization through no other mechanism than the plants themselves go, if we get pollen in here, in a good environment, we can repeat its cycle. Like that is how I think it took over. Cannabis wilded the majority of the world until we started eradicating the fucking thing.
You want to know how fickle the genetics are, Simpa, right? I've been doing this. I've done over 20,000 sample tests now. I've done thousands and thousands of tests. Now, I know a cultivator he's done a certain strain for pretty much all his life. He only grows one flower. He only does this one certain cultivar. And he's had a mother for goodness knows how long now. And the mother went through so much stress and so much abuse and so much trouble over her time that his last grow that he tested, the flowers had reverted back to CBD. So he thought he was growing THC flower, but the mother's been stressed that much that it's reverted.
See, that's interesting because the cannabinoid modulation, in terms of what we were talking about before about taking cannabinoids in and then there being an internal alteration, the same happens in low THC plants, that if you then stress them, they go to THC. It's like, so it's
everything starts off as CBG. We know that everything starts off cannabidiol, and then it's what happens to that acidic form for there to what kind of plant you're going to get. If your plant's under too much stress, your plant's not going to put the energy and the effort in to try and turn that to THC. It's just going to turn straight to CBD because it's easier to process.
But this is interesting as shit, though, because then what would be colloquially termed hemp cultivars in the Far East, they typically present with an opposite cannabinoid ratio, a higher THC to CBD ratio, because of the protections necessary for the different environmental factors.
See, I see hemp as being like finola and things like that. I see that as being hemp. That to me is hemp.
I mean, if you look at the go out of cannabis into Cannabizi, into the family of which it belongs in, there are far more other, what would you call them, better candidates, I would state, for traditional hemp, as it were, to appear in, whereas then a lot of the accepted cultivars that exist today are abused or restrained cannabis cultivars that actually, if you give them space, if you give them energy, instead of growing spindly sticks, anyone that's then gone, oh, I'm going to put 40 plants in this 1.5 tent has seen, it ends up looking like air quotes hemp, because it grows long and string because it knows I need to give space for the others and I want space. So it competes to be stringy and nothing. And so even through a few generations of that, you will end up, again, because it knows through an intrinsic almost intelligence, as all things seem to have.
But see, then we look at that and we're looking at the negative side of things, with like abusing the genetics and things. Now, at the same time, I know another gardener, another grower who produces flowers on a scale that cannot be, most people would struggle to produce this in their lifetime, the quality of flowers. And they're producing flowers that have got such a wide variety of cannabinoids, some pushing 20-21% THC with high levels of CBD in them, pushing 5 and 6% CBD as well. So to me, that's like I call that like a holy grail flower. Something pushing 20% and having a good 5-6% CBD kick to it as well. What you probably find is it sits high in CBG and CBN as well. Naturally, just naturally the way it is grown, because the plant's photosynthesizing different. The chlorophyll's being like it's being used in a different way to create the cannabinoids within the plant. And I don't know whether it's down to his skills or whether they like or what he's feeding them or just the genetics that he's grown. I don't know what it is, but he seems to produce these flowers that are like the holy grail.
I think it's scaling and giving space for the evolution of individual. So we have to go into chemovars.
It's like time for them to do what they need to do. A plant will tell you what it needs to do and when it is ready.
Yeah, and this is where you end up with like the freaks. So you can then clone a plant, but you'll still end up with variability of it. Then if you clone, you put 10,000 of them down, because you can have isolated pockets where you can't micromanage the environment. You get different expressions. So then if you were to then take those genetics and keep working with them, you'd end up exploring different chemovars of that cultivar. And so then I think what you do there is you end up finding, this is a really rough way to describe it, but scales. And so basically what you're talking about, it's scaled up. So if that was then before the 21%, it was kicking around let's call it 15% THC. So therefore it's around 2% CBD. So therefore it's trace amounts. You just basically, as soon as you've added and reached them up, you're bringing up the other base, and then actually being able to create a space where you could explore the other chemovars in that would lift the others as well.
Yeah. I mean, there's obviously skill involved in it. There's obviously the guy.
God, yeah.
But like you're saying, a lot of it can be done by science now. A lot of it can be tested, and we can test things at such an early stage in the flowering period now as well to determine what the overall.
You can sex the plants so early as well.
The thing being released this year that measures how much sugar is within the stem structure within 21 days of the flowering process. So before week 3, the flowering process, you can test how much sugar is within the plant, and it'll give you within about 2 or 3% how much that plant will produce potency-wise in the end.
Right.
Just by measuring the sugar content and up until week 3 flower. So that's the level that we're getting to now. We can actually sex plants from single cells now. So you can take a cell off a plant that's literally just come out its casing and send a sample of that away, and it'll tell you whether it's going to be male or female.
There's I've seen this home testing sex kits as well that are being developed. They'll have, I imagine, less accuracy, but a good indicator nevertheless.
Yeah.
But it's interesting that the innovation is now being driven by the larger legal market. No, because the intention of it. So obviously science is the tool being used, but the reason that hammer is being swung at this particular problem is because of these fuckers in their giant warehouses. Yeah.
And in a way, it does help us. In a way, it does bolster the end consumer, because it's only going to drive up the demand for quality as they catch up. We are going to take the next level, I think, as us being in the old school market. But there was never any competition before. And like we're saying now, even with the dispensaries are competing against each other to have the patients on their books. We've got commercial growers competing against each other for licensing and legislation. And then we have the end consumer who is still competing to get a fair price. And the end consumer is being exploited by these legal markets now by jumping up prices by nearly 40% and demanding patient referral appointments and things like this.
The Drug Science Project 21 is interesting, actually, the announcement. One of the things that hasn't kind of been passed through as much because of the price hike, the 40% price increase, is I think they're also dropping the requisite of 2 previous medications or therapeutic interventions. So you don't need to have had, when you submit your form for a prescription, you then ask about previous therapeutic interventions, whether it be medications, etc. They're dropping that requirement. So it's in some ways it's
accessible.
Exactly. So more accessible and they're going towards, we're going for a standardized price, but it's difficult because at the minute, it's causing issues where people are having to shop around between dispensaries, that you can get a prescription filled from one and moved between certain dispensaries and operate in certain ways, but you're still limited by the affiliations that were created between the dispensaries and the pharmacies. And then obviously with some of the prescribers as well, you've got to remember that some of the doctors involved in this are, how do I say this? It's easy to speculate that a lot of the doctors involved in this could be involved in it for a larger end goal, as it were. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, bigger stake at the end, yeah.
Yeah, so it very much feels like we're in research and development right now. This is an off-brand, off-label prescription medication. So for all there is the protections of the Misuse of Drugs Act, the Misuse of Drugs Regulation 2001, Schedule 2 of cannabis. We're still in a bit of a grey area with a lot of this, and it makes me think that, to come back to something we were talking about before with the low THC industrial cultivars or hemp being imported as CBD cannabis. So we've got an industry there that's importing this stuff. We've got a prescribed system that's then importing this stuff. And then we've got a market in the middle that's criminalized but growing some amazing products. Yeah. And it just feels frustrating.
There's not any revenue being generated by it. So you need to think, if you're going into hospital for an operation and you come out with 5 different prescriptions for certain pills or whatever, you're generating 5 sources of income for those pharmaceutical companies. You're also generating an income for the pharmacy and the doctor prescribing it. So in essence, you're creating seven trails of revenue. If you're providing your own medication that you are cultivating yourself, then where is the revenue that you're providing for the government? You're not providing. If anything, you're stopping them from producing for making revenue.
I'd argue that it's not even the revenue for the government, it's for that medical cannabis industrial complex, because actually then as a home grower, you're paying tax on your newts, your water, your electric, on the equipment that you've got to build it, you know what I mean, on the seeds when you buy them off wherever. They're paying more tax than Google.
Yeah, and you're still taxed on the wages that pay for it as well.
Yeah, we were taxed as well as a country on the country's drug trade. So since like 2010, I think it was, George Osborne and David Cameron valued the sex and drugs market of the UK at like 11 billion, something like that. Oh, yeah. So it's calculated in a GDP. So then part of public money pays for this. So then if there's a tax taken from the people, why the hell are we not allowed to do the thing?
Exactly. But see, the thing is, right, we've got all these massive companies that are producing all these flowers, Simpa, but we know where they are. We know who they are. It's public knowledge. Mm-hmm. But where is the money going for these licenses? Where's the 75 million quid that just went for the license that was just approved at the tail end of last year? Where does this money go? Does it go back into the economy? Does it go to these shareholders? Is it paid off in dividends? What happens to it?
Be interesting to know how much of it ends up back funding police for them to kick down doors of people growing cannabis and dealing to help keep, Ethel alive at the end of the road, making a bit of RSO for her.
Exactly, yeah, because she's got rheumatoid arthritis. Yeah, but it's madness. And it's always going to come back to money. And it's always going to come back to the level of criminality that's involved in it. Where is the crime being committed if you're consuming it yourself? Where have you committed the crime? Have you committed the crime by consuming it, by possessing it, by purchasing it, by sourcing it or growing it? By what part of that process constitutes as being criminal?
We actually move into quite a complex position moving forward with this advent of a prescription system, in that it further convolutes what is possession. So It's not illegal to be in possession of somebody's prescription. So I could pick up a box of my mom's opioid medication, you know what I mean? I can take her prescription, go to a pharmacist, get it filled even, and then walk home with the drug, but no proof of my right to kind of carry the drug other than like the name of it. Which even that's not my name, so it wouldn't give me that protection. So that's not illegal. So the same is then true of cannabis. I could possess your prescription cannabis, and it's not illegal.
Yeah, that's the only way that I can test it is by testing your prescription. It's not illegal for me to hold your prescription or to look at your prescription.
Exactly. So it creates these further loopholes, but then it also creates a tightening, a vice around cultivation, because then once you've got a licensing system, it becomes more a strict liability offense in the same way if you violate a road traffic offense, because you've got your license up front, you've already committed to certain modes of operating, certain ways of existing in rules and etiquette.
What do they call it? Modus operandi.
So then you then didn't have this with cannabis, but now under the licensing of it is because there is then licensing that can exist. They don't need to do you for possession or intent or whatever all these other things are. They just do you for the absence of the license.
And it's the evasion of the tax being paid on it now. So that's basically what they're trying to do is you've not got a license, therefore you're not contributing to the monetary side of things. So that's how you're going to be prosecuted.
Yeah, so it doesn't matter that it's a drug. So that's again one of the ways to get around this. So they can admit it's got a therapeutic value and that they can allow licensing to sell it and prescribe it, and people can consume it, and it can give them certain exemptions under prescription laws and regulations. But then, the raw material in and of itself is nothing.
Yeah, and I think right there, like, I think we've actually come to a great point. Is it's like define the misuse. Define the misuse of it. How are you misusing it?
That in and of itself is misuse. Says that there is correct use. Do you know what I mean? That's the way that the language operates there. So then if they're saying, all right, you're using it wrong. So then I go, okay, if somebody says, and this is part of the Section 28 defense of the Misuse of Drugs Act 1971, that if you just don't operate under their system, you don't accept or believe that it is a dangerous thing. You do not accept that it is a scheduled product. So therefore you're not involved in that criminalization of it.
And the scheduling of it. Yeah, exactly.
But it's difficult because then they work on a guilty verdict. Like, do you admit that this is cannabis under our distinction? Yes. So then as soon as you do that, you can't use what they define as cannabis correctly. So therefore it's all use is misuse is what they call it. Or this is all use is abuse and abuse is misuse. I can't remember which politician said that, but somebody said it.
And that's where the education needs to come for the people like yourself and people like myself, where it's trying to break the stigma between the Misuse of Drugs Act and the medicinal values that this plant has. It's trying to break down this Misuse of Drugs Act stigma that goes along with everything else, because there is no misuse taking place, for one. It's being classed as a Schedule II substance. And to say it's a victimless crime. In some substances, there is victims to crimes do take place in production on mass scale or mass cultivations and commercial size grows, whether it be people who are being pressed into running these grows or whatever. But on the small scale, like we've been discussing, on an artisan level or on a medicinal level where you're looking after yourself, then there's not going to be any criminality involved. There's not going to be any misuse of the drugs involved. So why is there not legislation being brought forward and a framework being implemented like there is in Canada and things like that, where this person's got a lifelong illness, they're going to have this till the day they die, they've been certified by XYZ, let's give them a permit to grow this many a year, you need to scan this code once every day or twice every week, and you need to monitor the progress of your medicine that you're growing, and somebody will come and monitor it sporadically from time to time.
See, I wouldn't even go that far. I mean, I don't have to, if I got ill and I could mitigate a great illness with a change in my diet, I wouldn't then have to verify that, I ate 4 extra bell peppers today. I think the point of cannabis liberation should be that regardless of your intention of it, you should have that freedom. Then the issue is if you grow 100 plants to try and sell it, there's probably a tax problem there. You're then generating a lot of money. So then if you then had a system where you could, as a self-employed, go, what are you, drug dealer? Okay. How much plants did you go? Okay, 20% of that is pay us, please. Thank you. Anyway. And if you then broke rules of like you sold a faulty product or whatever, consumer protection came and got you. You know what I mean? Yeah. If you sold something that was as a medicine, HMRA and those regulations, there are enough bodies for every part of a criminalized system to deal with cannabis. We just need to deschedule it so it's not involved in the regulations, because right now we're in a paradox. Cannabis is simultaneously a Schedule 1 and Schedule 2 substance. It's Schedule 1 if you've got your magic piece of paper, but if you haven't got your magic piece of paper, it's Schedule 1. So Schedule 2 with your paper, Schedule 1 without. We're in this mental state of then what is then cannabis? How is it a drug that has no medicinal value and a prescribable medication? Yeah. What the hell are you prescribing it for if it's not its medical value?
Like how can I can stand next to somebody else in the street and me actually actively hold possession, and then the person next to me be illegally holding possession?
Well, the terminology, I guess, in this sense would be unlawful, because it's not an illegal act. So again, even that, they've obfuscated so much of the language. They've made it so difficult for us to talk to each other, because some are going, hemp this and CBD did this and this, that. Even the report the other day of the COVID news about CBGA and CBDA, the acidic forms of cannabidiol and CBD, being reported over here. Hemp extract does this in the safe little corners of the gentrified whitewash places, and then everyone like, oh, it's cannabis, and you could see people's business mindset and what world and future they're invested in creating. And anybody that, frankly, this is going to be quite an extreme sentence, but I'm going to stand by it. Anyone that isn't defending and pushing for that unified cannabis future, we're not going to have that future. Jack Harris said, God, 20 or 30 years ago, that hemp is the future of all mankind, or else there won't be one. I will take that to the next level and say that it is now cannabis, because we need the integration of these industries, because otherwise we are going to end up with more carbon in the system, more acids in the ocean, less oxygen to fucking breathe, less deserts, more deserts and less forests. We're going to end up with fucking monocrops. We're going to end up with illness. We're going to end It's infinitum.
When I hear that word, mate, microplastics, mate, that fucking boils my blood, because there is no reason whatsoever that we should be using oil-based plastics.
Yeah,
there's no reason whatsoever.
Well, DuPont and others would argue that, well, sir, our billions and trillions of investment would state that there is very much a reason to use oil.
Because it finances the petrochemical companies.
Well, yeah,
that is the only reason for plastic. That is a byproduct of crude oil.
Yeah, it's interesting. We're now in these points of where history kind of touches on itself, and the narratives move apart. Yeah. So we're coming back to that point where it was basically cannabis and petroleum, and so we suddenly discovered all of these uses for petroleum in terms of nylon with DuPont production. We discovered then how to use it in pharmaceutical production, how to then use it in oil. So at the same time the diesel engine was created and the unification of the technology, you had people going sunflower over here, sunflower oil, cannabis seed oil, and then you had obviously the crude oil guys, and they hid the data. They lied about pollution and about impacts and stuff like that. And most of the conferences didn't care. Yeah, they didn't give a shit about it. And they went, look, the technology works for either effectively. So what we're going to do is go with this because these guys have got the shit. We like to dig this stuff up. It's got all of these other uses, and it's infinite as far as they saw it. Whereas this plant and stuff, and you've got to grow it, and it's that cousin of that dangerous hippie weed. And
you've got to pay people, and sometimes it dies, and sometimes it's not strong, and sometimes you need to do this to it, and you have to process it. You just drill, and this stuff squirts out the ground, and you put it in a fucking big fractionally distillator, and you get crude oil, and you get fucking gasoline, kerosene, and then it gets up to your spirits. You're thinner and thinner, your gases.
Just more and more uses as far as they saw it, but they couldn't see that, because obviously the world was built to this point on cannabis. You know what I mean? It grew fucking everywhere. As we were talking about before, it's preferable nature to go, I quite like it here. You know what I mean? I'm going to have some seeds, have some kids, boom, that plant, and it just keeps going and going and going as it regenerates cycle and season. That it's a wilding plant. It is a weed. That's why we call it weed. You know what I mean? So this is why I'm buying Jack's book. I've got a few other tomes, I think is a good way of describing them, that I've acquired over the years on my vast bookcase, and I'm just going to pull together as much data as I can for an argument I want to make about that. We need to smoke or at least consume a lot of cannabis. We need the markets of recreational or adult consumption to proliferate and take the fuck over, because that's what's going to create enough of the biomass to incentivize the changes. So we get rid of petroleum, we get rid of all fossil fuels, we remove ourselves from single cycle systems. Everything becomes regenerative. We start to then explore mycelium networks and connections and how those interact. We then start to understand a whole new level of human biology, of animal anatomy, of the symbiotic nature and connection of everything on the planet, and we live sort of hippie again, quite harmoniously with nature, instead of trying to, wrestle the horns of the bull. That horrible metaphor they use. You're like literally just a war with nature. Nature is about to destroy us unless we listen to it. We eat the mushrooms and hear the voices, as it were, and we have the experiences. We consume DMT, we smoke cannabis, we have these interactions with these plant teachers and hear their lessons and start to adapt and save this home, because it's the only one we've got. And exactly. Unless we start, this is what I'm scared of with medical, of what you're saying, is that exploitative systems are just going to take over unless we win.
We've exploited it that much now, though, mate. Is we are eating things out of the oceans that are polluted by us. We are actually eating our own pollutants now. It's that bad.
Yeah. With this, there's a lot of bias to talk about accumulation through sort of waterways of creatures living in water. So they found excess cocaine levels. They found in various creatures. They found the fertility, the contraceptive pill they give to women. That's then a change in the biology of amphibian creatures and things like this. And it's really, on a cellular level, detrimentally affecting the interworkings and the warping of nature. Nature's evolved over the entirety of the history of this planet, one system on top of another, on top of another. Everything has been placed on it. And then all of a sudden we arrive with the technology we have over the past 200 years. And we've just went, all right, we want the stuff at the bottom of this. So we went, instead of, we've gone through the history of it, took all this millions and millions of year old fucking shit and pumped it back into the system and just collapsed. We've taken out of balance and equilibrium this system that's harmoniously worked infinitum, that allowed us to get to the population sizes that we are. And this is why I think that there is this backlash at the minute of the world, of everyone trying to figure this out, and certain elements of neoliberalistic capitalism trying to monetize and own and license and patent all of this as it's developing. And the people that are consuming it more and more and going, wait, we should fix the planet. If you want kids, they should have air to breathe. We should eat better food. And it's the more you consume it, there's a reason these fuckers that own these companies don't consume weed. Oh, sorry, you can see the consequences of them not consuming cannabis. They don't have that relationship with the plant. They go, just make more money. I want more millions. I want to drink more cognac. I want a bigger yacht. I want a second house in the fucking Alps. They're not understanding until they get that boom and that awakening thought of going, my excess and my desire is causing problems,
Because you're saying that, because if you were to go into like a GP or a doctor's and say you were consuming excess alcohol or whatever, now your GP could relate to that, because every GP's probably had a 1 or 2 nights in a lifetime where they've had excess of alcohol.
Mm-hmm. Exactly.
So your doctor can relate to that. But if you go in and speak to your GP about maybe wanting to consume cannabis or exploring the benefits of cannabis, your doctor's not going to be able to relate to that.
But this is why it almost creates a warping of statistics around then. GPs only ever see people for cannabis when they're trying to quit or they're trying to get off. It's the teenager that the mum's pressured them to go and say, see, you've got a problem, or they've been arrested, and they go, the fucking solicitor said, if you say you're an addict, we can get you off. You're from a good background and we don't want you to have your life ruined. So there is a thing, I'm going to speculate on this right now. I would like to see some legwork done. This is just entirely a hot take, that I wonder if cannabis psychosis I'm air quoting there for my listeners, and cannabis use disorder, still air quoting, is more prevalent in the middle class and affluent areas where a cannabis conviction would ruin their life. Thus, calling it this or walking down that road allows them to obfuscate responsibility and protect their future. While the lower class would go, I was just smoking weed and that, innit?
Yeah,
all the crowd would then say, admit, and they lose that ability to.
Bracket, I would say, within a certain age and within a certain sort of class bracket. I mean, like you say, we're just speculating, we're just throwing ideas against each other here. But from what I've seen in my experiences over time, I would probably agree with that. Yeah, I would definitely agree with that from what I've seen. Yeah.
Because I think the narrative is there for whatever intention it's then when caught. I guess there's that moment of going, well, I don't want my mum to find out, or my dad, or I could lose my job, or so then if the fight or flight kicks in that instant, they then get to make a choice of going, do I stand up and go, it's a bit of weed, whatever, and take, I'll go caught, whatever, find it in possession and take it as is, or do you then paint this narrative and go, no, what if, I've been peer pressured into it and I'm just holding it for a friend at school and I only tried it once and because I was depressed and this, and you build this narrative of complacency with the authorities to say that you are not responsible for your consumption. And so I really hate that narrative of going, no, if you've chosen to do something, own the fucking thing. You chose to do it. If you don't like the outcome, then don't do it again. But you still chose to do the thing.
Yeah. It's just about owning up to your actions, really, isn't it? It's about
being responsible.
Yeah. It's just. I mean, I never come from a very, very privileged background at all. I think you're right in what you're saying. Like growing up, a lot of my peers and stuff would have just took it on the chin and been like, yeah, whatever, pay the fine or take the warning and get on with it. Whereas I think a lot of people my age and the circle above me, or the peers above the level that I was at, would probably go to mummy and daddy and try and get some help and try and fight a drug conviction and inverted commas there. But it's, I don't know, like you're saying, it's if you do get stopped and you are approached by the police and whatever, if you do admit guilt, you're basically putting a noose around your own neck. Simple as that.
That's the point of the legislation, is it doesn't need to prove any evidence once you admit guilt. Are you in possession of cannabis? Yes. Job done. Here you go. Here's a piece of it. So if you then dispute it, this is what we're starting to I think become aware through hopefully the work of Outlaw, who, fingers crossed, touch wood, folks, should be a guest in the coming weeks, about sort of this defense that then if that isn't cannabis as you define cannabis. And as we're discussing, they can't define it in the legislation because it's multiple. It's in either it's
layers to it.
Yeah. So if you can then say that is CBMP, that is a cannabis-based medicinal product or product for medicinal use, CBPM, sorry, in this country. And so if you can then point and say that, they've got to prove it isn't. And they can't. They'll come to you and then go, "Well, where's your prescription?" And then you go, "Well, I don't have to answer that."
No comment.
No comment. So then they go, "Okay, all right. So that's prescription cannabis. So what is that? That is a CBPM. You know what I mean? And it's about. Remember, we have to remember in all settings. And I heard this, and I'm not going to knock on who it was, but from an extremely high up police officer after a very private meeting, he said to me, "You know what, Simpa? There is only one crime in this country, and that is getting caught." And so when you think of it in that sense, I think it kind of changes the way you look at this. If you can avoid getting found responsible from their setting, then you're not a criminal. So unless you admit guilt and they find you guilty and you get the end conviction, they can think of you as much as they want. But it's until they sign the thing at the end of it that you're a criminal. Whereas we're almost indoctrinated through media, TV, through films and everything else, through things like the bill, that as soon as the cops have got your handcuffs on, I'm a criminal, I'm a bad guy, my life's ruined and everything. No, you can be as much of a dick as much as you want there, as long as they don't have evidence to charge you of a crime. So again, you don't have to tell them shit. They say when you sit in that room, you basically must provide anything you require in evidence you have to give in the interview. But they don't tell you that's all you have to provide. So you can literally go, that is a cannabis-based medicinal product. No comment, no comment, no comment, no comment, no comment, go to court. They go, all right, what is it? It's cannabis. Yeah, we've tested it. It's cannabis. Cool. He's saying it's this. And then, he could have a reason to possess it if it's somebody else's prescription, but he's not telling us whose prescription it is. It's enough that they need intent.
There's too much.
Just mitigation. Not mitigation, because mitigation comes after the fact, but it's an obfuscation of the proof. I mean, they can come in and go, we know this, we've got this, and they can pressure you and they can for their 24 hours. But if you then hold strong and just go, that's what it is. And that's what I think they're starting.
They need you to admit that to proceed. They need that. They need you to basically put it around your own neck for them to take it forward.
It's admission. Yeah, exactly. That admission of guilt. And we've been pushing this for years. Me, Trev Coleman, the Seed Our Future guys, and a few others have been really talking about that they have no proof of this. So Seed Our Future did the freedom of information requests to the Home Office, to the CPS, and to all of the police forces in the UK. And none of them hold the evidence for cannabis scheduling. There isn't a thing to go to. So if you go, well, we said this is cannabis, he said it's not cannabis, and they go, right, get the evidence to take to court. There's nothing. They don't have a form or a piece of paper. They literally have to go to, it is cannabis and it's illegal. Why? Because of the 1971 scheduling of cannabis as Schedule 1.
Because we said
so. Yeah, so that wouldn't hold in a Crown Court. It'll hold in a magistrate where you've got like strict liability, and it's if you admit and don't question what the fuck they're saying, they'll find a way to, or you've admitted that it was cannabis, therefore there's no way out of it. So it's about understanding the system that is being created, and I'm hoping that's what Outlaw is going to be doing this year, and that others are going to be becoming aware of. It's something I'm going to be exploring a lot more, like I said.
Definitely. I think, like I said, I think we touched on it earlier as well. I think it's down to not just one individual. I think it's down to everybody, just to, even if you change one person's mind every other week or whatever, or you can put a point of view across to somebody's even just willing to sit and listen to you talk about for half an hour. We could sit and talk about stuff for hours. It's just that this is what we do. This is our passion. But to sit and speak to somebody who's maybe on a different page for us, or maybe even just for a different social background entirely, and just sit and have an educated conversation with them, even just doing that with some people's difficult enough, Simpa, and you know that yourself.
Yeah, but I think this is where we're kind of coming out of this astroturfed period where international conglomerates from countries like Canada came into the UK to bolster up and push for legislative change that would make monopolies easier for them. And in doing that, they destroyed this quite unified, varied, eclectic, weird, wonderful, beautiful, compassionate community of cannabis consumers in the UK that didn't care who you were. You like weed? I don't care if it helps you sleep or whatever. Everybody could be like, I consume cannabis. And even the people that went, well, there wasn't really this thing of I don't like to get high. That kind of became a narrative more towards when pharmaceutical industry got involved, and more toward, it was the high is the therapy. You get that relief, that calming, that's part of it. So then we're being sold this lie that the cannabis can be therapeutic as these isolates and these synthetic compounds. And so they're trying to create this narrative of pushing people sort of towards this. In order to do that, they need to demonize the black market, the legacy market, who built this knowledge. It was the compassion networks. It was the buyers clubs. It was the communities of people for decades that built this shit, that know this, that passed that knowledge around back before the internet, when people had to write books and physically fly around the world and give lectures in people's back gardens and shit, man, in movers and with the movers and shakers of communities, and teach them how to make full extract oils, how to understand the science of this, and then the underground magazines and media that developed. And then all of a sudden there's this weaponization and creation of an industry. And suddenly the pharmaceutical industry and the other big, air quoting, the big players like agriculture, tobacco, alcohol, etc., all got involved and have bastardized this model of cannabis and gone, give them this crap, this stuff here for recreational that we don't understand right now. And then these two things that we do understand, weaponize and laser focus into certain hyper profitable, patented single-use compounds. And and so in the process of doing that, they destroyed this community in the UK. And I think now we're coalescing back together slowly to go, all right, you consume it and you're recreational, or you adult consumer and you grow your own. And all right, I've gone through the rigor with the clinics now, and I'm like, well, all I ever got there was legal protection and a piece of paper that said I'm safe. The products I got were substandard. In some senses, may have actually damaged or worsened my health. Obviously, yes, some people will have found benefit to counterbalance that statement. But as a whole, the industry seems, as we spoke of, exploitative. It is the extraction of cash from some of the most vulnerable sectors of our community, but not just money.
People who are relying on it. It's people who are relying on it that's affecting the most. Like I say, it's people who have used this like legitimately, who have used this to come off with like harder pharmaceutical drugs such as your opiates and your benzodiazepines and things like this to substitute masses of THC instead of having masses of opiates in your system to just to have a quality of life, and then to be exploited for the prescription to go from £200 to past £300 in the space of a couple of days it's madness.
Yeah, it's frustrating. I mean, obviously for people that are not quite aware, that what you're alluding to there is obviously drug science going up from £5 to £7. And the reasoning that they've given for it, just for balance, is that it's the extension of the program into a second year to try to gain the extra patients for that data set that they haven't acquired. You know, if they were saying they've got about 5% of the numbers that they wanted to be able to have the data to take to the government. And if drug science is still true in what they really mean by this, if they're actually trying to create a data set that will go to inform access of cannabis in its raw form on the NHS, I think that is a good thing. It's just I think stand by the patients. That's what I think we need to do. I think they need to stand by the consumer at the end of the day, and then the numbers are going to come at the end of it. But they need to have the consumer's best interests at top of the list, really. Well, I'm hoping that what is allegedly occurring in corners of social media at the minute is going to then prompt more of an investigation, a bit of light to be cast upon this subject, because there are some very dark corners, as we've alluded to over the past 2 hours. Looking to wrap up shortly, because I've got somebody else's podcast to record shortly. But yeah, man, I think the ubiquitous testing, if we could get more testing in the community, so that then we could just get rid of this argument that they're going, the flower that I can grow in my bedroom at home and know exactly what I've put into it and love it and care for it every day. And you're saying that can't be better than what you've produced in Israel. You've then irradiated, flown over here, stored in a warehouse for 5 months.
Yeah.
You can't tell me that's wrong, and the only way we fight that is if we, the community, develop data. So I think
you need to, as a community, we need to start demanding that the flowers are coming with a set of numbers on them, even just to know the potency of your flower, because not everybody wants to be taking these flowers at 25, 26%. Not everybody. Me personally, I don't want them. I don't want something that's going to weld me to the sofa. I want something that It's going to combat my pain. It's going to help me get through the day and still be able to function and still be able to have a thought process and a train of thought. Whereas other people are out there for these higher potency strains. People who do suffer for like severe tremors and Parkinson's disorder and stuff really, really need these high extracts and these high THC flowers.
Yeah, I mean, hell, even the people that do just want to get glued to the couch for the evening, you know what I mean?
Yeah, and there's nothing wrong with that.
But it's informed consent. This is the issue, is that if you could actually know what you're looking at, because we can't. You can be a connoisseur of cannabis and then look at a plant and then smell it and kind of get a rough idea of kind of the terpene profile that you'll pick up, but you don't then know if that's gonna put you down or pick you up. You don't
know by looking at something, whether it's by a finished product, whether it's an indica or a sativa or hybrid or otherwise. It's impossible to tell by.
I would disagree there, because that's for the taxonomy and the physical appearance of the plant. So you could tell by the leaf structure of it. But in terms of advertising, sorry. Yeah. I've had a perfect example of this actually just taking place now. I've seen someone do four exactly the same plant. They've had one that was a male, they've had 3 that were female, they've had one that's taken one kind of side of the phenotype, they've had one that's taken the other, and then they've had one that's a mixture of both. Mm. Yeah, and that's the key bars within that cultivar to use the current consensus language.
So you've got like an indica-led sort of strain, and then you've got one that's a bit stretched and sort of more sativa-looking in appearance, and then you've got one that's a mixture of the two. But every one of them is the same cultivar.
Yeah, but it's good. They're going to express slightly differently, and this is where the science needs to catch up. Is we don't yet quite know what is going on with that. Obviously, a lot of the breeders will then know to interbreed them to create the more stable hybrids within them, which is, we live in a world of majority hybrids. So it's basically what I was arguing against there almost was sativa indica, of stating that sativa uplifting and energetic and indica. That's old advertising. Yeah, so it's almost like get a creation of a standardization of language is something I've been pushing for a long time, and I think that ubiquitous. Sorry, go on. I was going to say ubiquitous testing, fucking standardization of language. So when we both point at the same thing, we can say it's the same thing. Yeah. And then a truth and transparency within the prescribed system that is existing in the UK. Because
number one.
If they were so proud and if this is such a good system, why aren't they advertising everywhere? They can say about restrictions of this and that and whatever. No, man, you guys could be on the BBC. You could be everywhere. You could be literally signing up hundreds of thousands. Why are you only letting in a handful of people through the door? And why is it the system is not operating as has been promised? And that's not to blame any one individual player within it. I imagine there are good actors, to use a term, operating within the system. I don't doubt that at all. But I feel the overall trajectory and direction of this current incarnation of this system is a racketeering and exploitative system that is not for the betterment of the end patient, consumer, however they want to term us.
I mean, for what I've been seeing circulating on social media and stuff, it's pretty evident what's been going on. It's pretty evident to even the uneducated looking at it from an outsider's sort of point of view. It's clear to see what's went on. There's been things that have been sold and resold and been branded and rebranded. And it's basically driven by money, like you're saying. It's driven by finances. It's until the consumer is put first, it's always going to be driven by money.
But is there an issue here that if you were to put the consumer first, you would allow them to also grow their own and create compassion clubs and be provided by people that are growing outside of these good manufactured practice facilities? And that's the problem. That is their real crux of the problem here, is that they can't do what is truly good for. And I'm not saying only grow your own. That's not what I'm saying. Don't paint me into that corner. I want a spectrum of access that includes everybody, everything.
Yes. So not everybody able to.
Exactly that, but you have compassion networks, you can have networks of clubs, you can have people that can come grow in the same way, you have cleaners that come to your house or whatever, you can have, you made Dave do it for whatever, you can have those.
Isn't it?
Yeah, but and you can still then have the pharmaceutical systems and whatever else, but I think that they need competition outside of their own little pond of those little 6 to 12 little fish just swimming around. There needs to be piranhas in there. There needs to be sharks. They need to be aware of the size and scope and scale that there are competitors that will outdo them. If you suddenly allow some of these guys that have been winning cups for 10, 15 years that have got genetics in this country to operate and come to both sides of it, both therapeutic and adult consumption, they're going to dominate everything. Screw your Starbucks of cannabis. Screw your big pharmaceutical players. People are going to go to these guys every single time because they have perfected their craft with passion, with love, and they are setting the standard of knowledge and education.
And these guys will have more knowledge in their brains than any scientists will do over 20 years of genetic modification. And that's just through trial and error because they've done it on such a vast scale for so long.
And exactly. They have an eye that there is no AI can replace. There is no automated system that you'll be able to get rid of a 40-year grower veteran that'll be able to walk into a room and be like, "We got a problem." Yeah, exactly.
That one there, that's the one I want.
Yeah, exactly. To be instinctual with the plant is these mechanized system. And again, the upscaling of the over-corporatization of these models means that there's nobody touching these plants. They are now creating robotic insular systems that nobody touches it. It just comes out as a product at the end.
And getting the genetic collapses and things on themselves because there's not any fresh meat coming through, if you like. There's not anything new coming through to bolster up these genetics.
It's the ecosystem as well, man. Cannabis needs rewilding so that we can fix the environment so we can grow it outside. So we don't have to worry about bioremediation of toxins from the soil because there aren't any fucking toxins. We don't have to worry about pollution from the air because there's no fucking pollution. This is the end goal of this, people, isn't to sustain capitalism through the end of the world. It is to stop the fucking end of the world.
Exactly.
It sounds hyperbole, but I think if we can get through this argument, this blip in the community, as it were, and I say that in the widest possible sense of anybody that consumes or is interested or passionate about cannabis in the UK, and reunify around it. It doesn't matter if you consider yourself therapeutic, medicinal, you consider yourself an adult consumer, if you are a farmer, whatever, identify as, are you passionate about this plant or are you here to exploit us? And then draw that line. And if you care and you're going to give your life and you're going to fight for the next 5, 10, 15 and build an industry and a legacy and work with passion towards researching and developing new and novel technologies, applications and advancements within that field, they're the people I want to go first, not these vulture capitalists.
You have to keep pushing it. There has to be changing every day. There has to be new discoveries. There has to be new things created to look deeper into these cannabinoids. We're just learning. We're still discovering cannabinoids every day. We don't understand how terpenes work with your body. We don't understand. But we're still doing the science.
But that knowledge should not be hidden behind fucking a laboratory door. It shouldn't be for profit. It shouldn't be patented intellectual property. And that's what I fear is the research that is done thus far by Dr. Mashalem, I can never pronounce his name, with research into sort of THC in the endocannabinoid system and these discoveries, that a lot of that has then been, it's public facing, it's public knowledge, but then a lot of sort of discoveries that we're seeing that are now leading towards patented product development, that education information isn't being put out in the public realm. So then rather than informing that wider discussion and conversation and advancement of knowledge about the whole plant and its potential, we're hampering and handicapping ourselves. So rather than we need a global approach with this. Cannabis is and was one of the big, what do you call it? Like, not mitigators, like, worst way to describe it, I guess, a universal lubricant between the systems that existed. You know what I mean? Because of its proteins, because of then its ecological and its environmental benefits to two systems, and its absence has caused the collapse. So it's rewilding those those systems on a global level, and that means negating the use of coal in certain places. It means stopping building hyper dams and diverting trillions of gallons of water. It means really understanding that affecting now artificially creating and generating rain in the world in one place, which is now not a conspiracy theory anymore. It's now just general fact, apparently. And then not wondering why half the world's flooding. You know, we have to take this. Yeah, if in a grower would do that, can you imagine if cannabis growers ruled the world? So they would look at the whole planet and go, I've got a problem in this corner of my grow room. They wouldn't ignore that and go, I don't like that corner. They would then go, no, right, so I've got a problem. I need the light. I need to, how do we fix that and make so that, okay, how do we standardize this? And actually this works here, so I'll do this here. And I want to try it. And it's with love and an advancement and a curiosity and a passion that garden flourishes. And I use the term garden because that's what the world should be to us. It shouldn't be cities, and it shouldn't be these isolated concrete cages that we create. It should be a paradise that we live in. And cannabis is that symbiotic species that works with the mycelium network. It works with the bees. It works with the deers and the rabbits eat it and shit. You know, everything wants to participate in the consumption and the moving of cannabis and its genetics around the world and the wilding of it. You know, the Feed the Birds campaign and everything.
But for something that's been around for thousands of years, it's been written in scriptures, it's been put into, it's not just in one faith, it's in every faith that's books that have been written. I mean, they've been making bang for thousands of years. It's been in the Sikh faith for nearly 3,000 years, documented. I mean, for something being reported to be so medicinal and have such massive effects on your body, to still be persecuted against is just it's insanity, really.
It is, but conversations like this, which I guess we're gonna have to sort of wind down. I'll move on to my final question in a second. I hope really kind of advance that in that it allows people to think maybe outside of our limited perspectives. It's one of the things I'm trying to do with this project is to humble myself before my guests and my audience and the world in general to go, I don't know half as much as I should know, but that's not to say that I should have known it already. That's to say that the only way we can advance through this is to be as informed as possible. And I can't read all the books and learn this shit. It's only from talking to other people and communing and kind of going, well, maybe I'm wrong, or have you thought about this? And conceding in this dance of understanding that happens through interactive communication. That's what we fucking need. So I truly believe that the best way we deal with this is we all start fucking talking. If you've been prescribed and you've got a story and there's something going on here, I'm doing an investigation. By all means, reach out to me. It is something that I'm putting together for a couple of pieces for the website, or reach out to anybody. Tell that narrative. Speak to others. There are more people, and allow us to go, wait a minute, then this isn't the savior. This isn't the silver bullet that we were promised. Then let's unify back together and fight for what's next. Let's not wait 6 months, 12 months, 18 months, 2 years while they build and weaponize and entrap us in their system. Let's go. All right, it's legal now, you're saying, for medical use. Let's gather together. Let's grow our own. Let's test our own. Let's sort ourselves out, man.
Instead of waiting and wondering what is going to be next, let's make what is next happen. Let's make it happen. Let's not wonder and wait. Let's go and make it.
Yeah, man. Because
at the end of the day, it's going to come down to the people at the end of the day. And if the people make that choice, I think I seen a poll the other day that 58% of the UK population would vote for legalisation of cannabis if it was to be put up for referendum. So,
and it was only 38 or something percent said no as well. So it's
and the rest were still undecided. So even at that, if you were to put an intelligent argument forward for it, which there's no denying, there's an intelligent argument for it now. It's in my mind, it's a straight win, really, isn't it? That's our point of view. There's people who have got opposing points of view. And there's always going to be that. And I think that's kind of the beauty of it as well. Like, not everybody's going to agree. Not everybody likes the same strain. As simple as that. You like to smoke a certain flavour, I like to take something else. And that's, everybody's opinions are completely different on it. But a lot of people that I spoke to in the last year at the events and whatever, every single person has said the same thing, that we need to take control of the cannabis industry in the UK.
We are the cannabis industry in the UK, frankly. We are the people that have been here, that have lived this, that have grown these plants, that have consumed them. We're not sat here going, we want a legal market and then we'll give you some money and we'll participate. They're consumers. They're active people waiting to consume. They are not representative of the cannabis industry. The people who are breaking the law every day, in the sense that they are criminalized for consuming cannabis. They're not criminalized for consuming it. They're criminalized for possessing it, for trading it, for cultivating it. For being the sort of by proxy harmed by the system, for being involved in the hydro industry, for being involved in CBD or other sort of head shops, those kind of things. We are the industry. That is the people the people that should take charge of this. And I think that now we're existing where the loopholes, because of licensing, and now with the potentially the public embarrassment of this system, the revealing of its fallibility, I think will lead to an opportunity where we could take control of the industry. So
yeah. And I think when you speak to Outlaw as well in a few weeks' time, I think that's going to be a great thing to lead on for our kind of conversation as well, because that's kind of taking it to the next level with him as well, because he's the next level for obviously what we're discussing now. He's at the point where he's actually dealing with people and he's actually representing people and dealing with these cases at a magistrate sort of level as well. So it'd be really interesting to see what his outlook and what his opinions are compared to last year in the space of 12 months. Because even just the past 12 months, the change that has come forth in the past 12 months has been absolutely astronomical. Yeah.
It's moving so thick and fast. And I think that, again, touch wood, cross fingers. We get this recording done and this episode out. I can discuss sort of with Outlaw then this strategy and what is sort of going on there with this idea of empowering the individual to almost just overthink, as a kind of loose way of describing it, the current Misuse of Drugs Act.
Yes.
So empower people to not be beholden to it. And then once we nullify by the people that legislation, we are not bound by it. And I think from there we can build social clubs, consumption spaces, cafes, infused in restaurants, all of the things that we're all on the sidelines building. People are registering domains. They are, even buying property and stuff. People are really thinking and preparing now, and we are the ones again that should be allowed the opportunity. So I think the movement of the community, if it could be guided, I think needs to be that, to give them the power to just operate and then just watch what happens. Give us 2 to 3 years where we can build it unrestricted, and I guarantee you we'll be further down the fucking line than these guys were in 3 years.
It's what I keep saying to people is we need to take a hold of this before it's taken out of our hands.
Yeah, so it's getting to be the last kind of chance.
Yeah. And it's getting very, very close now. It's getting close to the wire, and it needs to happen. It needs to happen ASAP. Yeah.
So I think this year's a good year of optimism. I think there's a lot of people really fired up and really excited and energetic. So we'll move on to the last question, which is a question I ask everybody, which is what does the future hold?
Oh, that's a big question for me. Like I say, I've been battling health problems for the past couple of years now. We spoke a bit about when we were at Paradise and stuff, but I've been really ill. I've been fighting back to try and get some strength back to even just to go back to work, to try and get some financial support again, and just to try and keep a roof over my head. But this year, I'm definitely pushing the analytics side of things more. I want to be at as many events as possible, just to provide some analytic numbers for people there who are producing their own medicine, people who are taking that next step and who are producing medication for themselves, just so they have a rough idea of the percentages and the potency of what they're producing. And in the same breath as well, I mean, we've got massive update packages and coming from the guys at Delta 9 who by the grace of God, I don't know why I've taken a bit of a shine to me and let me deal with the UK analytics side of things. But they've got some massive gadgets coming this year for the home consumer, whether it be turning things into oils and extracting things for other means. But they've got a lot of gadgets coming for the artisan producer, shall we say, this year, and it would be good to showcase these at some of the events as well. It's basically just it's taking the next step as from testing the cleanliness of your product to producing a secondary product from your product, kind of thing. So you're growing something clean, so let's produce another. So if you want to use it to extract oil, you can use the machine and make your oil safely rather than having to go and buy off the legacy market.
So I think, it's really good to be able to... So
you're basically covering yourself from start to finish, basically.
Exactly that. I think it's an empowerment of the individual at home. I think can never be a bad thing. If we can create enough of a grey area, no matter how restrictive they get, as long as we keep hydro shops in some form, some air quotes souvenir seed market, and these kinds of technology, that there's enough that you could be truly self-sufficient if you chose to be. And I just want that discretion to exist with the form of legal protection. Yeah, that is part of a spectrum of us all kind of getting that access.
Legislation has to follow suit as well. I mean, it's fine, fair enough for saying all of this and hoping for these all things. Unless the legislation comes through afterwards, it's all futile. It's done for no reason whatsoever. So we need to take ownership of that as well. We need to be pushing for legislation to be pushed through. We need to be pushing for testing at atomic levels and testing for heavy metals and testing for contaminants and things like that. And until we start demanding that, then there's never going to be anybody to fill that market, so to speak. I mean, you could go out and buy one of these machines and set it up in a laboratory or whatever, but it's getting the people to put the products through it at the end of the day that's going to create the industry, isn't it? So until that's there, then we're kind of restricting ourselves.
So I guess it's those that can do in the community and reach out and build those artisan producing micro communities, whether it be on a compassion network scale, a cannabis club sort of scale, or just a private members establishment where individuals like to consume cannabis alongside other, like alcohol or whatever. There's a spectrum of access that should be created here.
Yeah. It's just about, I would say, we go on about having this family and this community that we're in, and it kind of took a bit of a hit the past year with COVID and stuff, because we've not been able to meet up and we've not been able to socialise and whatever. But it is still there. People are still interested. People still want to exchange dialogue and whatever. It's just getting people out to these events and getting everybody together to bounce everybody's ideas off each other. It's fine, fair enough, you and I sit and having a conversation, but somebody else has just got a completely different view or a completely different approach to a certain idea that we might be, fucking hell, this guy's right, this guy's spot on for the money thing. And it's not until you sit down with maybe 8, 10, 12 people and we sit and discuss these topics that things kind of get ironed out and we can kind of see where the path's leading us in a way.
Yeah, for sure, man. No, totally get that.
But so hopefully by the end of the year, I'm just hoping that everybody's going to be singing off the same hymn sheet, basically, where everybody's wanting to be producing a standardised kind of set of testing for flowers, whether it be testing their own, testing the new legal market, or testing whatever. I just think that we need to be providing numbers so people know what they're consuming. At the end of the day, you could go along to your mate at the end of the street and buy flower off them and consume it and not have a clue what percentages it is, whether it's sativa, indica or otherwise. I think we kind of need to start reining in the genetics and stuff and label things and keep a track of things before it gets way, way overcomplicated.
It's just informed consent. At the end of the day, it's informed consent and best practice. So
it's harm reduction for me. If I can provide you with a number and you know that number's more than what you can handle, then I'm providing a service for you to reduce you for harm, basically. So that's, in essence, that's what I'm trying to do.
Yeah, and I think that the ubiquity of testing would then also create accountability within the prescription system, and also allow for monitoring of supply, so they can avoid what the US is currently going through a wave at the minute of these scare stories in the media of fentanyl laced cannabis.
Yeah,
you know what I mean? Yeah. It's this reefer madness 2.0, this kind of newest propaganda, and it's testing stops that. If we can then they make a claim and we go, well, actually, there are 400 testing facilities in the UK. Of their data, not one of them reported this thing in that supply. Can you check your source on that story? Yeah,
and then you're police. You seem to be policing the police after that, and that's what we need to push for. I think we need to be self-policing and self sort of legislating. So to say this is what we want on the products, or we want to know these set of numbers or these set of details on the products and basically the origins. And it's not really that difficult either, but it's something that can be done pretty quickly as well, pretty simple as well.
Yeah, we could set that standard, and like I said, I think there would be more continuity and consistency within the currently criminalized market than there would be the currently prescribed one.
100%. Yeah.
All right. Dude, it's been a pleasure. Definitely gonna get you on later on in the year and see where we're at. And I think we're still early days, man, in 2022, and we've got a lot of events going to be coming online this year. As you say, you're going to be like traveling around a lot, and I think that hopefully, as you said, by the end of the year, there'll be a bit more of a consensus of people going, actually, you know, a bit more forgiving and going, well, maybe I got defensive of this and maybe I got misled here or this here and that, and a bit of just understanding that very powerful people, be humble, exactly, and understanding that very powerful people just turned up with a lot of fucking money and just tried to build a £1 billion industry on our backs, on the graves of our brethren that are still in jail for this shit. You know what I mean? That we're still criminalized for, and then beating us, going, like the thing, don't talk about the thing, take the thing, enjoy the thing, and
they're taking the money and giving you taking the hand and handing out the flower in that hand.
Yeah, so recognize that we've got far more in common, guys. That if you currently have a prescription, don't have a prescription, don't believe in prescriptions, whatever side of this you're on, if you support cannabis, you are pro cannabis. These guys, unfortunately, for the vast majority, it would seem, are not. So we need to act collectively and build an alternative model. It's all well and good we stand up and fight against this, and that needs to happen. But we need an alternative to replace them, man.
I think a lot of it's going to come out in the wash as well. A lot of the speculation and the grey areas that are going on at the minute. There's rumblings on the media at the minute, on social media, of what's coming. So I hope that a big shake-up comes in the next few months. I think it's needed for everybody.
Yeah. I think it's already occurring. I think we are witnessing the pre-tremors of potentially something rather seismic within the industry. And if it doesn't open up a chasm and swallow it whole, I think
I'd be surprised.
It's, I'm not saying it's an apocalyptic event, but I'm saying maybe for people that were being a bit questioning of this for the past 3 years, grab some popcorn, guys. It's going to be a fun few weeks.
Yeah, because they're going to be shockwaves.
Yeah. And on that note, do a bit of housekeeping. I want to say thank you very much, James. It's been a pleasure.
Pleasure as always.
Yeah, man. Yeah, I look forward to seeing you in person physically sometime soon. I'll drop some links below to sort of Delta 9 Analytics, where people can find you online and keep up to date with your wonderful work that you're doing with the community. And yeah, it's been a privilege, man.
Bless. Sweet.
Peace, man.
Thanks, mate.
All right, folks, if you've enjoyed this, do check us out on patreon.com/Simpa Life, on all social media platforms at the Simpa Life. Do the liking, the sharing, and the subscribing, because currently I'm getting my ass kicked by shadow banning and restrictions and censorship across multiple platforms. So anything you can do to help increase those analytics is a good thing, especially ahead of some quite potentially big name guests over the next 6 to 8 weeks, at least if my ambition holds true and some emails with some agents come to fruition. So I'll leave you with that little thing to ponder. Cheers, folks. Peace and love.